коліно, своє полкове знамено. Дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Відвагу нашу нашій волі, загиблих друзів імена. Читаю нашого неволі, я полкового знамена. Дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі. Всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Усе, що разом пережито, в походах вистраждано все. Я знаю, інші гордовито прапороносець понесе. Дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі. Всю кров мою, всі скитання,
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 424 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And as you've probably heard by now, something massive is going down right now around Ukraine.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine here on the 424th day. And it appears that the information that has been coming out from the southern area of Ukraine is showing that things are going down. Of course, we can't get into exact details at this moment, but it does appear that the Black Sea Fleet is under attack. Ukrainian forces have made a foothold on the southern end of the Dnipro River, and there are massive traffic jams of Russian forces leaving the area of Kherson across the Chonhar area, and it appears that we don't want to say it for certain because, of course, all of the information hasn't come out at this point, but the counteroffensive may have started just around a few hours ago. We, of course, cannot say exactly where Ukrainian forces are, what they are doing, or anything else, but we do have a small amount of video footage that has been released by brigades in operation near the Kherson area, and also citizens within the area of Sebastopol that are showing that activity is happening in all of these areas at the exact same time. Once again, I want to make sure before we go into tonight, all of this is happening in such rapidity amongst each other and in such a small localized area, it does seem that this all may be connected to each other, at least as we're reporting this news. But I always want people to keep in mind that we are looking at the preliminary information. We may see that this is just a coincidence that all of these things are happening at the same time tomorrow, or it may be that the Ukrainians have already entered Sebastopol by 3 days' time. I can't ever confirm or tell y'all that for certain, at least until the next day. And tomorrow, of course, we won't even... Well, actually, I'll change that. If the counteroffensive is going on, we will probably be live on air tomorrow covering that news, but we'll just have to wait and see and play that by ear. But moving on into the city of Sebastopol, the Black Sea Fleet is under attack. This just happened 10 minutes before the stream went live. 10 minutes before the stream went live. This is actually happening right now. The Russian Ministry of Defense has already come out and stated that there is no damage to the Black Sea Fleet, which is completely untrue, as the attack has not even ended yet to see if there is any damage or not. We got this incredibly short video from a high-rise building near the port itself of some drone exploding onto an object, and then it went into complete darkness again. We hear the explosion right there. And of course, the darkness is kind of shrouding what that hit. We cannot tell if the drone hit a ship or a port facility, but it does appear that once again, the port city of Sebastopol, home to the Russian Black Sea Fleet, is once again under attack by Ukrainian forces. And at this moment, we do not know the extent of the damage to port facilities and the Black Sea Fleet itself. Moving on into the Kherson area and the Kherson Oblast. Well, actually, before we even get to the Kherson Oblast and making our way north, in the area of the Chonhar, I guess you could say peninsula or the Chonhar Gap, we have heard that there is a massive traffic jam of both citizens and Russian forces that are moving their way from north to south along the E101, the E105 highway, trying to make their way into Crimea. We don't really know why they're doing that, and we have not heard similar news around the area of Armyansk. In fact, we haven't heard anything about the Armyansk area at all, but we have heard that there are massive traffic jams in the Chonhar region. We have not had any picture or video evidence to confirm this, but it appears that the reports are coming out consistently amongst a large number of, I guess you could say, OSINT Twitter pages, and it does seem that it is the case that there is a massive movement southbound from the area of the Kherson and Melitopol Oblasts, or more so, I don't really know what this oblast is actually called. I don't know if the Zaporizhian Oblast. I believe it actually is the Zaporizhian Oblast, but there's a massive movement of forces and people from this area down south into Crimea. And this may be tying into a little bit of news we have finally heard in the Kherson area. The Institute for the Study of War has stated, and there is video proof to back this up that appears to have been released by the brigade conducting these activities, that the Ukrainians have crossed the Dnipro River against everyone's expectations, and have now created a very large foothold within the marshes in between the area of the Dnipro River and Oleski town. To show you all this area on Google Maps, you can see that the area is incredibly marshy and quite swampy. We don't know of course, and we wouldn't get into the exact number of Ukrainian forces that are in this area, but it appears that Ukrainians have been meeting very little resistance, at least from initial reports, moving into the area of Oleski, which may be showing that there are limited to no Russian Russian forces in this region, and the Ukrainians are moving forward completely unopposed, which may also be explaining why the Armyansk route is completely empty, as there are really no Russian forces to be retreating or withdrawing from this area if we are currently looking at a counteroffensive. Moving into the actual video evidence itself, which was published, we believe, by Ukrainian forces, we saw Ukrainian boats ferrying forces across the river and landing them on the other side in broad daylight. Another interesting thing about this is that Ukrainian forces are crossing the river in broad daylight. If there were Russian forces on this side of the river, it would be far more advantageous for them to launch the landing operations at night, as it would hinder the visibility of their landing forces. But it appears that the Ukrainians know that there is such little resistance to an offensive on this side of the river, they're moving forces over in the middle of the day. And this is, from what we understand, taken about 10 to 12 hours ago. And we can see the
Ukraine's not scared of those Russians. They'll go over right in the middle of the day.
No, apparently not. They're apparently not scared at all. And they're just funneling them on over. And, you know, and speaking of while we're watching this footage, I didn't even get into the fundraiser for tonight. The fundraiser for tonight is Save the Children. Of course, Ukrainian counteroffensive is ongoing right now, and there will be plenty of children, hopefully, if the counteroffensive is actually happening. Once again, I want to say we can't really confirm it at this moment because this news is new by only a few hours. So, of course, you know, take it with a grain of salt for now. But if the counteroffensive is going on and they will be liberating large areas very soon, there will be plenty of children within these newly occupied areas that will most likely have been through the ringer under Russian occupation, and Save the Children will certainly be helping to save the lives of these kids. Unfortunately, of course, YouTube removed the window from the YouTube live chat showing us the fundraiser there, but if I go to my phone real quick, it appears that the fundraiser has reached $2,000 nearly within the first 20 minutes, which is incredible. And of course, we always want to make sure to plug our fundraisers. So I've already put in my $100 to make sure that we can save as many Ukrainian lives as possible, and Save the Children is an impressive way to do it. And so I highly suggest that y'all donate tonight as we watch these brave Ukrainian soldiers moving forward into Russian-occupied territory and most likely retaking it and liberating dozens, if not thousands, of children from the hands of the Russians. We can now see the Ukrainian forces moving into the populated village area here. We don't know exactly where this is near Kherson. Of course, we don't want to get the exact location down either, but it is on the southern end of the Dnipro River. With that rounds out this clip, but once again showing that Ukrainian forces are making landings on this southern end of the Dnipro River in broad daylight just around 12 to 14 hours ago. And wait a minute, hang on, this was recorded on April 18th? Hang on.
It's a few days old, so this could be something that was happening, you know, when we were talking about it last time, that they were saying that they were preparing for it still. This could be part of it.
This could be part of it, but I don't think anyone actually stated that this has been going on for that long, and the footage came out today as well. And so that may be showing that the Ukrainians have been silently ferrying over their own soldiers for days, almost a week at this point, and now there's such a sizable force that they can control the entire southern marsh area of the river. This is actually quite crazy when you really think about it, and apparently they've been completely unopposed so far in their holding of the swamp area. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the area of Kherson, but going over this all over again, just to make sure anyone joining the stream right now knows what we're looking at. Right now, Ukrainian forces have created what appears to be a considerably strong foothold in the marshes on the southern end of the Dnipro River. They've we've noted that large amounts of Russian forces and citizens in occupied territory are fleeing southwards from Melitopol down the T503, I believe. Let me make sure I get that correct. It is the E105, actually. They're evacuating down the E105, a large amount of Russian forces as well as citizens that are living in the Zaporizhia Oblast, and it appears that they are moving into the Crimean area. At the exact same time, it also appears that there is a drone attack occurring on the Black Sea Fleet, which may be causing untold amounts of damage. Of course, we don't know for certain, but it is incredibly wild to see that all of this is happening at the same time. And I actually saw someone say that it's an OPSEC thing. It's not an OPSEC thing if it's on the 18th of April. That's nearly a week old at this point. It's OPSEC if it's talking about where they are right now, and we're not getting into any of those exact details unless if there are no Ukrainian soldiers on the ground, for example, in Sebastopol or at the Chonhar Gap. With that, we're now going to be moving on.
And also, if it was an OPSEC issue, if it was one at some point, it's all over Twitter now, so there's no undoing the damage.
And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the southern area of Ukraine, at least the southern occupied area of Ukraine, which hopefully, if the news coming out is anything to go by, this may not be lasting for that long anymore. It may actually be Ukrainian territory within the next few days. We're now going to be moving on over into the western area of the country, near Ternopil. And I thought I would show this for a minute because sometimes we talk about collaborators getting arrested. And you know, everyone, and it's always begging the question, who in the world would collaborate with the Russians? We actually saw 2 women today that were members of the Russian Orthodox Church, and they were interviewed by a Ukrainian, and this is what they had to say on, I guess you could say, the war, or what's been happening. And it is pretty wild, I'm not going to lie. So here's the clip. How do you feel about Putin? Well, he's our leader. Putin? Yes, both the Holy Patriarch and Putin. And in Kievan Rus, Zelenskovsky. And Archangel Michael said, obey the authorities. If they do not obey the authorities, there was Yanukovych. We don't want him. Little children are going like this. Maidan. We don't want him. I don't want to talk about it. You were a child and you were going against the authorities. Alright, please tell me, you say you have a good attitude towards Putin, but he launches missiles and children die. It's God. Do you know what kind of arrows he can send for lawlessness? That the whole world, angels can send such arrows that the whole world may explode. For lawlessness, for disobedience to the authorities. Everybody does what they want. Little ones who protest against Yanukovych. Yes, Putin, God has given him the right. He is appointed by God's power. Archangel Joe Michael said so. There are no authorities not coming from God. You know, I got to say this real quick. This is pretty insane to hear 2 people go, yes, the guy who's committing genocide, both culturally and ethnically against the Ukrainians, yes, he is appointed by God himself. And I guess they don't realize if they were on the front lines, the Russians would kill them like anyone else. It wouldn't be any question at all by Russian forces. They go, oh, look, it's Ukrainian. Well, they're not Ukrainian anymore. And it's absolutely insane. And I don't, like, the simple defeat of their argument is that if you're supposed to respect authority, isn't the Ukrainian government the authority of the Ukrainian land? I mean, like, it is a sovereign country since 1991. Wouldn't they be the authority?
You'd think so.
You would think so, but apparently not according to these people. So I'm sure, I'm going to have to be honest with y'all, I'm pretty sure that these folks are on some kind of a watch list in the Ukrainian government, because these are the kind of people who do end up collaborating with the Russians and end up trying to give away things like HIMARS positions or supply caches and their coordinates and similar things like that. And it is pretty crazy to hear people with this kind of mindset, and really sad to think that they got kind of swayed into this. And also you can see why the Ukrainians, for this reason, are banning the Russian Orthodox Church, because the Russian Orthodox Church has somehow brainwashed people with this kind of mindset where for some reason Putin is just the overall authority of the world, the only one. So with that, we're going to be moving on from that little clip, a pretty wild one in its own way, and with that, we're also going to be moving on into the area of the location unknowns. And we've had some fairly interesting location unknowns today. So starting off with our first clip, we saw that a deputy of Sweden's parliament, Carolina Nordengrip, has actually volunteered for service in the Ukrainian army. We can actually see a picture of her right here. We can see another picture of her showing, I believe, her enlistment forms or volunteer forms. We can see another picture of her. You know, the Sims are going to be going wild here in a minute. I know it. We can see a picture of her holding a small puppy. And then the last picture wearing some kind of a bandana. I'm calling that a bandana. I'm sure there's a better word for it. I don't know the exact wordage. But still, very interesting to see that a member of the Swedish parliament has actually gone and volunteered and is part of the Ukrainian volunteer forces, most likely the International Legion. And it's great to know that the Ukrainians can rely on support, not just from countries in NATO, but countries that want to be in NATO. And so, with that, pretty neat to see. The Sims are coming in. I see the Sims coming in. They are going off. And with that, we're on to the next bit.
There they go.
Oh man, there they go. They're off to the races. Who's going to win? But anyways, with that, we're going to move on to our next clip where we saw a sharpshooter hitting some Russian soldiers. And so here's the clip. You can see the Russian wandering We can see the soldier fire, and then we can see that guy. He immediately got a limp. He went, "Oh, bliet machine," and then he just kept on walking. And we hear some explosions in the distance, and it appears that the Ukrainian sharpshooter was able to pull off the shot. We don't know how far of a shot it was, and it appears that this was also brought by the Extreme Tourism Company. I don't know what kind of tourism this is, or what kind of package you get at the travel agency to go on this kind of vacation, but nonetheless, very interesting to see a Ukrainian sharpshooter pull off a shot like that, and I think, regardless whether that guy took a nap or not, he's probably going to be out of the war for the rest of it. I have a feeling that his shin is a little dusty, and not on the outside, but on the bone. With that, we're going to be moving on from that little bit of location unknown news, and on into our next bit, where we saw a pretty good move by a Russian. It appears that a Russian got smart, and so here's the clip. There's no audio, actually, but we can see this Ukrainian soldier running forward. And we see this Russian soldier here has brought forward a tablecloth strapped to a stick, and it appears that the Russian soldier is surrendering. A very smart move by this guy. He's apparently decided what's the smartest thing to do. And unfortunately, we can't really see the Russian prisoner much anymore. We can see that they're trying to take away his jacket and things to make sure he doesn't have any grenades or anything similar on him. And now we can see the video looping again, but it appears that this Russian was smart enough and lucky enough to get away from his unit without being violated or executed, and also smart enough to surrender to the Ukrainians so that way he doesn't have to fight any longer in this war. A very lucky guy, because most Russians are not that fortunate. With that, we're going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into the next bit, where we saw a drone drop on an AT open-air market. Matthew knows about farmers' markets.
I do.
That's true. And Matthew knows that most farmers' markets are open-air.
Really?
Yes. Yes. And we're about to watch them get rid of a open-air farmers' market that's selling mines. The mines are ripe this time of year, and we can see that they're quite ripe. A small nuclear explosion occurred as the explosive filler of most of the mines detonated, and the rest of them went scattering around like rain in a rainstorm. Well,
and they really weren't expecting it to go up that high, apparently, because the drone operator was like right over the thing.
Dude, I mean, dude, if Oppenheimer was here right now flying this drone, he would go, "Oh, I have become death, the destroyer of worlds." But I mean, like, that was one hell of an explosion right there. I wonder how many tons of TNT that was, because it had to have been actually a kind of okay amount. I would assume at least one, or more. Of course, that's a really big ballpark estimate. It could be way more than one, but still, absolutely wonderful to see that they were able to get rid of so many open-air mines, because if those mines had no longer been open-air and the Russians had actually planted them into the ground, those could certainly pose major issues for Ukrainian forces in the future. Once they start to push through that area, many of their armored vehicles could become victim of those anti-tank mines and end up being destroyed. With that, we're going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next bit of Location Unknown news, where we saw a homemade Ukrainian mine-clearing vehicle. Like the video we just saw, the Russians have been bringing in an excessive amount of mines, and the Russians have an endless supply of these anti-tank mines in reality, as most of them were made during the Soviet era and have been sitting in supply depots ever since. Unlike tanks and other kinds of sophisticated weaponry, anti-tank mines can actually last for quite a while longer than a tank can, and so the Russians have been bringing them out in mass. And anywhere Russian forces have been, there is an incredibly large amount of mines, and it's made it very dangerous for Ukrainian farmers to do their job, and has made it incredibly difficult for Ukrainian citizens to live normal lives. And we can see that some Ukrainians have taken it into their hands to create improvised demining vehicles like this one here.
What in the world? What was the base vehicle under that?
I have no idea, really. But we can see him showing it off. It appears that they've taken parts of an amphibious vehicle and some wood, and they've clipped it onto probably a tractor, and this is now their demining vehicle. You see him showing the flaps to try and stop the shrapnel from going under the vehicle. It looks like it's actually a tractor. I think this is just a normal tractor with a whole bunch of stuff thrown onto it.
Yeah, it might be the farmer actually that's talking about it.
Yeah, I think it is. And when you see it rolling through the fields, we haven't seen it run over a mine yet. And no, actually, it's not a tractor. It's a truck. I don't know what kind of truck. Let's see. It's a T-150K. A T-150. That sounds like the Ford F-150 of the Soviet Union. Actually, it is a tractor.
What
it is
in the world?
The most confused. I'm so confused. It looks like a truck, but it's also a tractor. That's a real picture of one right there.
I don't know if it's an abomination or is it something good? I can't tell. It's got like a snoot on it, like with that engine sticking out so forward.
Man, this thing looks like it got stung by a bee on the nose. I mean, like, this thing is pretty bizarre looking. And I think the Catholic Church would call this heresy and have this thing burned at the stake. Nonetheless, I must know more about this thing. I really do. Because this thing is just ugly. Let's see. Der T-150K is an Allenrachen-Traktor. I know I'm butchering that. We'll translate that to English. Let's see. The T-150K all-wheel drive tractor from the former Soviet and now Ukrainian Kharkiv Tractor Works in the 30 kilonewton tractive effort class. In its basic structure with articulated steering, it is similar to the larger and more powerful K700s that apparently were made by the Russians, by the Russian, I guess you could say, Soviet Federation back when that existed. But still, this thing is, wow, this thing is ugly. It's terribly ugly. I mean, like, it's bad. I mean, it may be Ukrainian made, yes. This thing is hideous, though. I've never seen any kind of tractor that looks like this. But anyways, moving on from that rabbit hole.
I think the stuff that they added to the sides of the like mine clearing version of this thing, it actually kind of helped the looks of it.
Yeah, I think it actually improved with the aesthetic. I'm not gonna lie, this thing is hideous. It's a good thing they covered it up. Oh, they got an iPad in this thing?
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, this ugly thing's got an iPad.
Uh-oh. OSHA. OSHA, where you at?
It's time to cue that meme that I sent you, Matthew, of the OSHA shaman. We can now see it moving its way through the field, and we can actually... Oh my god! Are they kidding me? They made
It's RC?
It's an RC abomination.
Now that is the coolest thing
That
ever.
is crazy.
Like, how'd they rig that up?
I don't even know. I don't even know how you do it with something that is that old, but they've done it. Dude, the Ukrainians are really smart people. And I guess he's sitting up there so that way if a mine explodes, the shrapnel doesn't get him and he's just in the bucket. So, these guys are genius, man. They've thought of everything. And we can see the soldier, well, not the soldier, more so the farmer just explaining how it works. And we can see that they painted Ukrainian flags all over this thing, and it's just making its way through the field. It hasn't run over a mine yet.
Do we even have RC controlled like mine clearing vehicles like that?
We do, but they don't look like, I guess you could say, that simplistic. Ours are incredibly advanced. We've actually shown a few of them on stream before that we've given over to the Ukrainians. And we can see some sappers coming through. It looks like they're clearing off some areas. See them showing off some of the destroyed buildings and also a minefield sign that was down there. Right there, that's a minefield sign. We can see some guy here traveling. We can see a little dog and a babushka. More destroyed buildings. And we can see the demining vehicle back at it again. This is ingenious. I'm honestly blown away by how intelligent these farmers were to come up with something like this. I mean, like, incredible.
If they can rig this up to be remote controlled, it seems like they could rig something up like with like a regular vehicle and like maybe like make a remote controlled like turret and just like drive the thing into battle and not have to have a soldier in the truck.
I mean, they probably could. If they're able to do this, I wouldn't doubt it that they'd be also able to make remote controlled BTRs that they could use for infantry support. But amazing. I'm really blown away with this, man. This is why the Russians are losing the war, because the Russians will be like, oh, look at this, we're so strong, so genius. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are just coming up with these unholy looking things and then strapping on heavy weights to the front of them and rolling them through a field to blow up mines. I mean, this is really next level ingenuity right here. And I feel like if they brought that kind of ingenuity to the Western world and the Western markets, we probably see a lot of really cool and cheap things coming out of Ukraine that work really well. Kind of like this. Like, who in the hell would have ever thought that someone would have made something like this? Absolutely impressive. And so with that,
Next up on Russian propaganda. Oh, blyat, the Ukrainians are using ghosts to demine, blyat.
they're probably going to say they're experimenting with the remote controlled truck so that way they can load bioweapons on them, drive them across the border, and kill everyone. That's probably what they'll be saying next. And therefore we must nuke them, or something like that. But anyways, we're moving on from that amazing clip right there and on into our last bit of Location Unknown news, where we saw the Russian casualty report for the day. And it is actually quite high in a decent amount of categories. We saw that 2 Bobcat skid steers, of course having to cover that first, were destroyed over the past 24 hours.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, let's go! Let's see here. Oh, we got some Bobcats. We got some.
Oh, nice.
Let's see here. And we got another one. Oh, Edward throwing in
Hey.
one. We got
Do you even lift, bro?
oh man, and we got a pretty decent amount of Bobcats. 2 more for Matt and Don.
Don?
Don.
Oh,
I don't think that's the right Don. Don.
No, that's not the right one.
That's one of those. That's one of those. Don. But anyways, a lot of Bobcats. Got to say, quite nice. And we can also see this guy slapping himself in the head with a tree. Very genius. But anyways, moving on from that.
It looked like something else, Don.
It looked like something worse. But we can see that 690 Russian soldiers have bit the dust in the past 24 hours. That does not include the wounded. And that is getting on up there again. That's getting towards almost an entire battalion tactical group's worth of manpower completely wiped out of the Russian army today. And that is quite significant, especially at this point in the war. Only one armored personnel carrier was destroyed today. That is one of the lowest numbers we've ever seen in the war. We've actually seen the number get to 0, but this is about as low as it gets and well below average. However, in the supply truck category, we did see that 12 supply trucks were destroyed today, which is a little bit above average, I think by about 2 vehicles. So not that bad at all. We're actually quite happy with that number, as that means that a decent amount of Russian forces were not able to receive their supply quotas for the day and are most likely having to operate on a reduced, I guess you could say, capacity for firefights, things like that, and they're most likely trying to conserve their energy as they may not have some food. So great to see that 12 trucks were destroyed. We also saw that 3 main battle tanks have been destroyed over the past 24 hours. Once again, not the highest numbers we've seen in the war, but still 3 main battle tanks is not bad whatsoever, and means that the Russians will have to pull out even more T-62s and more T-55s to replace the massive numbers of losses that they're starting to take in the tank category. We can also see that 5 artillery pieces have once again been destroyed today. We've seen that artillery losses are consistently getting higher as the war goes on, and it does appear that 5 to 8 is the new average criteria for artillery pieces destroyed every single day. We also saw that 4 drones were destroyed, and a single helicopter was also shot down as well. We heard that it was an Mi-24D, but we don't know for certain because we haven't gotten any video or picture evidence to really back that up or confirm that. But still, it is absolutely incredible to know that the Russians did lose another helicopter of any variety because, of course, they've already lost 1/3, 1 out of every 3 of the helicopters that they have in the entirety of the Russian Federation. And so any extra additional loss is greatly felt by the remaining Russian airborne forces. With that, we're going to be moving on from the casualty report and on into the middle of the country, down in the area that we located near Preshnepe. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, or Novo Pekelny, which honestly is a little bit easier to pronounce, where we saw a soldier reunited with his daughter. I put this marker in this area. It is inaccurate. We don't really know specifically where this happened, but I thought I would take it out of the location unknowns because it was a very special video. You see the soldier entering the classroom. And you see the daughter seeing her dad for the first time in probably months. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but it was an incredibly heartwarming one, and very nice to see that a soldier was able to reunite with his daughter. And of course, those are the kind of kids that sometimes don't really have the best of fortunes. While the dad in this situation is the one who's near the front lines and being shelled and in gunfights every single day, and luckily was able to return home to his daughter, there are many children that are in the near opposite situation where their parents may have been killed, or they're living with their families inside of a basement of a city that's constantly being barraged or under the threat of barrage by Russian forces. And of course, once again, merciless plug, that is what the fundraiser is for tonight. Save the Children is an incredible nonprofit organization that's been able to save the lives of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of children over the course of its organization's history, sometimes being involved in some of the bloodiest and most brutal conflicts that the world has ever seen, like the Second World War. And even in Ukraine, to this day, they still help to save hundreds of thousands of children from a certainly tragic fate. And I, of course, highly suggest that folks donate to Save the Children. Once again, a merciless plug, because they do help to save the lives of kids that find themselves in the war zones of Ukraine and in perilous situations even behind the lines. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the location unknown news in general and on into the frontline news itself, covering the Northeast and moving our way down into the Southern Front. But before we get into any of that, we have to recognize, well, actually, before we even do that, hang on, just scratch that. It is time, Matthew. It is time for a GO.
Oh?
I think it's
Is
time.
it time?
I think it's time. It is time for a general order. General order. General order number 15. I think it's number 15. You know what? We're just going to skip ahead. General order number 273 is now in effect, just to make sure that I don't make the numbers intersect with anything else. General order number 273 is in effect. If you have $5 to give, throw it in right now, because I want to see this fundraiser get over the goal before the hour is even over. General order number 273 is now in effect. I'm going to throw in my $5. And now we got people throwing in hundreds. Good Lord. But let me throw in mine so that way we can make sure to get this fundraiser over the top, so that way we can make sure that Save the Children gets support that they need to continue to save lives inside of Ukraine. And so, with that, the general order number 273 is now active, and hopefully we can see that the fundraiser blows well over the goal here within the next few minutes. And I have no doubt whatsoever, the Lee Spring Army has never missed a single goal in the history of this channel. We have always gotten over every single fundraiser goal, and sometimes have gone even well beyond it. And I know, as I watch all the $5, $20, $50, and every single kind of donation come in, like that 1,000 Canadian dollar donation from Davis Campbell,
Dang.
which is unbelievable, and probably just got us right up to the goal.
It's very close.
I know the Lee Spring Army is the best, or the best group on YouTube. There's no other group on YouTube that I can think of that has been able to raise so much in support for the folks in Ukraine. And I know tonight we are certainly going to be getting over that goal again, as we are now only, I believe, $600 away from goal, and we are racing towards it at incredible speed. And so with that, we're going to start, well, actually, we're going to give that a minute. Let's go over the polls first, Matthew, and then we'll go over the top donors.
All right, so while those donations are flowing in really fast, we have 3 polls to address. And real quick, let me grab one thing there. There we go. And the very first poll says the Ukrainian military has allegedly crossed the Dnipro River and established positions near Kherson. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 39% said the Ukrainian counteroffensive is starting, 6% said unsure, 28% said it's too early to tell, and 27% said Ukraine is still preparing. And I must admit, this seems like it's around the border of the actual counteroffensive starting, but I think it's a little too early to tell. Once again, this was from apparently the 18th of April, so around the time when those statements were made by the deputy, I believe it was deputy defense minister, that said they were preparing and getting into place. So I'm with the 28%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that the counteroffensive, from the information we're getting right now, may be happening, but once again, I'm saying may with a great emphasis on may, because it's a lot of things are lining up right now where there's loads of activity going on in and around the front lines in the southern area that may indicate that the counteroffensive is going on, because a lot of things are lining up that would make it seem that way. But it may just be that it's a really good day for the Ukrainians down there, and it's sending the Russians into a panic, but the counteroffensive isn't happening just yet. So I always have to make sure to put out that disclaimer, and for that reason, reason, I'm going to have to say maybe. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
Oh, and we are so close to reaching the goal. I think we're about we're $1 away. It's
$1. Oh, we
$4,999.
crossed it. Let's go. We did it.
Jaga jaga.
We did
Igor.
it. We've reached the $5,000 goal. We've done it in 47 minutes. Impressive. That's very impressive. And I got to thank everyone so much once again in the Lee Spring Army for helping this fundraiser to get to where it is. Of course, everyone always loves to hear the news of the war in Ukraine and what's going on over there, and especially on a large night like tonight, especially with the news that's coming out. But one thing I always want to make sure that we do on this channel is while we report on what's going on over there, we also keep the people who are living over there in the middle of this war in mind. And I think we do that every single week, and then some with every single Sunday fundraiser that we ever run. We have gone always above the goal, and I'm sure we'll be going well above the goal even tonight again. And I've got to thank each and every one of y'all 424 days into the war and always keeping the Ukrainians in mind and helping these fundraisers to get to the unbelievable heights that they get to. We're currently at $5,184 on the fundraiser, and it's absolutely unbelievable to think that we've made it this far again. And I just got to thank each and every one of y'all because it really does blow us away that we are able to still fundraise that much this far into the war. And by the way, you know, just to not to be a mathematician or anything, because I'm terrible at numbers, but if we add what the fundraiser has gotten to tonight right now to what we have listed down as our total raised over all the fundraisers we've ever run, we would be somewhere in the ballpark of $925,000 right now at this moment, which means that we are within the final $75,000 to reach $1 million raised over the course of this war. And I got to thank all of y'all for once again making that possible. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on into the next poll.
All right, and our next poll says, Ukraine says Russia are forcibly evacuating residents near Kherson as the fighting intensifies, and what are your thoughts? 61% said it's indicative of the offensive, 15% said unsure, 13% said it may be a feint, and 11% said it's a precaution by Russia. And I think that the evacuation is probably a precaution by Russia because they see that the counteroffensive is imminent, and they're going to go ahead and try to do damage control and evacuate civilians so they can't, you know, get in the middle of the harm's way. Kind of unusual move by Russia because typically they don't really care, but this time they're evacuating them out of the area. Probably to get them on into the army or something again. But Enforcer, what say you?
It is interesting to hear that they're supposedly evacuating Ukrainians from the area. I have a feeling they're most likely just evacuating Collaborators, however, because that's what they did in Kherson. They didn't evacuate the entirety of the city. We just found out they ended up evacuating most of the Collaborators, and even then they left some of them behind, and they've now been arrested by Ukrainian forces. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our third poll says, instead of denying Lavrov's visas, the U.S. settled on denying Russian journalists visas, and what are your thoughts? 47% said that's still really weak, 12% said unsure, 25% said that's better than nothing, and 15% said that's good and the best option we had. And if y'all saw today, something that infuriated me very badly is after the visa was issued to Lavrov, he came out and started obviously bashing and attacking the U.S. as being cowards, and called us all sorts of nasty names as he's on his way to New York on our own turf. So very irritating to see. Personally, I think they should have denied his visa. We shouldn't let somebody that's hostile like that, who's fighting a war in a country that we're supporting, into our own country to come and spew more lies. So I'm with the 47%. I think that was really weak. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. I think it's really weak, and I hope that somewhere around New York, I mean, he's going to New York City. I hope that a New Yorker up there says, "Hey, I'm walking in," and then just sucker punches the guy right in the face. I mean, and this is a little wishful thinking. No one will probably ever be able to get that close to the guy because the Russians probably know how much they're hated here in America. But maybe it'll happen. I don't know. I'm trying to keep a positive outlook on things, but in all honesty, I think it is fairly weak. I think we should have denied their visas and stuck to that, and said, if the United Nations wants to talk to this guy, find a neutral country to talk to him in, like Turkey or Switzerland or something similar. At least neutral in the situation with what's going on in Ukraine. Although Turkey isn't neutral, but they've kind of been used as the negotiating or the middleman country in between Russia and Ukraine several times in negotiation attempts. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so that was our last poll. So now it is time to go over our top donors of the night thus far, and also to report where we're at on the fundraiser. We're currently at $5,581,
Holy
which is
moly.
$581 above the $5,000 goal. And real easy math to do because it's real simple. So good for me. But with that being said, starting off, we have a $1,000 donation from Davis Campbell. That is the largest donation of the night thus far, and big thanks to you, Davis, for being so generous and helping to save the children. And up next, we have a $250 from Nicholas Conder, as well as a $250 once again from Davis Campbell. That gets it up to $1,250. Good math, good math. And up next, we have another $250 from Nicholas Conder. We also have a $200 from Trister1, as well as a $100 from Hal Rose, AJ, Snow White, Activista, Charlie Nickel, somebody called The Enforcer, Tim Connell, Trister1 again, another one from BC Skyman. Then we have one from Palip Siropat, and Fred Von Hess. We also have a 60 from Cindy Mitchell, as well as a 50 from Silver Earth, Super Bunker 9000, John Webster, Rustin Rott, Axel K, Epic Trains Canada, Gene Kustra, Jimmer McNoodle, Scott PGH, and Dragoon 50. And Enforcer, I don't know if I missed any in the chat in the meantime. Have I missed any?
I don't think you have. So I think we got them all. And I have to thank each and every one of y'all so much once again. Everyone that we were able to call out for sending in massive amounts of support to the fundraiser, because y'all have helped to save a large amount of lives. And to everyone that we weren't able to call out, because there have been hundreds of $5, $1, $10, $20 donations tonight. I thank all of y'all so much once again. I wish we could call every single one of y'all out for what y'all been able to do to this fundraiser. It's been absolutely incredible tonight, and we've once again passed goal. And I got to thank every single one of y'all in the Lee Spring Army for always letting the entirety of YouTube know what the Lee Spring Army has done and what we continue to do to save the lives of the Ukrainians that are caught up in the middle of this war. It's unbelievable to think that we've been doing this for so long. We've done this for so long, actually, and I'll show you all this because this is legitimately crazy to me. We've run so many fundraisers because we've never missed a single Sunday over the course of this war. And let me make sure to refresh this page. And there we go. Yeah, there we go. So right here, this is actually the fundraiser that's going on right now. It's gotten up to $5.9 thousand. We're almost already up to $6,000, but we've run so many of these that YouTube has told us we can't have any more open fundraisers. We've run over 50.
We ran so many fundraisers, you got tired of fundraising.
Yeah, see,
we had to get rid of fundraisers.
Right down here it says, sorry, you're limited to 50 fundraisers at this time. Only 50. We can only have 50 of them open. We've run so many of them now that whenever we go and run a new one, we have to get rid of the of an old one. So I'm going through now, and I'm getting rid of the lowest number fundraisers first. Of course, the accounts are still managed by YouTube. The money isn't disappearing. It's just that it closes where it's not, I guess you could say, like usable anymore in a way. I don't really know how that works because they close anyways. But anyways, we've run so many of them that we're having to get rid of some of the open fundraisers to make way for the new ones like we ran tonight. And that is really crazy when you think about it, that we've been doing this for so long, that it's been over 50 Sundays worth of fundraisers, and we're still doing it. I don't really know why YouTube limits us to only 50 fundraisers. I have really no understanding why that's the case. Why not have 100 fundraisers that could be open at one time? I don't really know. I don't know what the reasoning is behind that, and it kind of aggravates me that we have to close them because I don't really know if they're still visible on the streams they ran on or not. So that really annoys me a lot. And also, not trying to sit here and riff on YouTube or anything, but it also annoys me that they removed the fundraiser window from the live chat that used to be here for the entirety of the war, except for the past month and a half we've been running fundraisers. They've gotten rid of that as well. But still, it is a platform that ensures, because they're legally obligated, to make sure that this money, 100% of it goes exactly where it's supposed to go, because if 100% of it wasn't going to where it was supposed to go, their accounts would show that, their, I guess you could say, financial reports would show that, and then they'd probably be sued for their shirts. Then they
Look, they just turned off the fundraisers. They don't want you seeing this. They don't want you seeing it.
They don't want you seeing this. It's not great for them. It's terrible. I'm going to tell you, it's terrible. They don't want you running more than 50 fundraisers because they know that the accounting for that must be terrible. Absolutely terrible. It is the worst that anybody's ever seen.
But anyways, I got to thank every single one of y'all once again for making that possible tonight. And now we're going to make sure to address some live chat questions from the amazing Lee Spring Army that has made this fundraiser tonight possible. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and first up, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. They solved it pretty fast tonight, and it was JP's Gone Fishing, Rumpelstiltskin, Steve Fay, Mark Hodges, Cliff Simonson, Dark Warrior 137, Paul Scholes, and Earl Bernew. And they said the Morse says Ukraine just stepped over the Dnipro, and now they are on the way to Crimea.
That's correct. Of course, that's a little optimistic. They're not on the way to Crimea right now, at least for certain. But I would have to say that it is absolutely incredible to know that they have crossed the Dnipro River and apparently run into little to no resistance whatsoever. And they're taking a large foothold down there right now, at least from what we've been told. And that may be days old information at this point. And so with that, thank you so much once again to both of y'all, well actually all of y'all, for deciphering that Morse code message, because it is incredible to know that we have greatly skilled people like y'all who were taught Morse code and how to read it. And so with that, we are on to the next, and also just in case there are already new viewers tonight, the Morse code message is brand new each and every night that you hear in the 10-minute intro. So once the sirens sound and you hear that Morse code message, it is not the same one each and every night. It's actually brand new every single night. And I think we've been doing that for about the past 300 days. So there's been 300 totally separate Morse code messages put down there. And if you know Morse code, you can actually read them, which is kind of a cool feature of our 10-minute countdown. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And also, big shout out to Donald Neiman. He put in a $50 super chat and got us up to exactly solid $6,000. I've never seen it like on an exact number like that before. Very nice. It does my OCD really well to see that. Very satisfying. Very nice. We're exactly 1,000 above goal. Another quick math. But anyways, our second question goes to Super Action General, who says, question for the Enforcer. If Ukraine sends many small boats to reinforce the landing over the river, could the beachhead expand and eventually allow larger ferries to land BMPs and tanks?
That is a great question, and I would say it could. It possibly could. It'll take a little bit of an effort, however, for the Ukrainians to make that possible, because, of course, most of the Ukrainian river fleet is on the Dnipro River, and a large part of it is actually in between Kyiv and Zaporizhia, as those areas are largely safe to keep the larger riverboats in. Once they pass the Zaporizhian Dam in this area and start moving on down into the Dnipro River Reservoir near Inohrdar, things start to get a little sketchy, as the Russians do control the entirety of the coastline, all the way from the area around Vasilivka and down towards Novokakhovka. And so for a riverboat to pass through this area, it's possible that it could come from underground fire and end up being sank. So it will be fairly difficult to get larger vessels down into that area, but if they are able to pull it off and they are able to escort that group down the Dnipro River and into the Kherson area, and of course past Novokakhovka, which is also a little bit of a problem itself, they could bring most of the river fleet to Kherson and continue to ferry forces across and help to grow the push in that direction. It's, to be honest, a little unlikely, because once again, you have to remember, it's going to be a monumental effort to move a river fleet down the Dnipro River and down into the area of Kherson, passing through the Novokakhovka Dam without taking large amounts of losses. And as far as I understand, the lock in the Novokakhovka Dam right here is in still Russian held and may even be destroyed, and so it's not operational. So that may be another small issue that'll have to be contended with. So if the Ukrainians wanted to move the river fleet from Odessa and Mykolaiv, or more so the coastal fleet, to Kherson, that's probably more so possible than trying to move them down the Dnipro. But if they did get a larger amount of boats that could ferry forces across, it's entirely possible that they could create a perimeter large enough on this side that they can construct their own pontoon bridge and then start to drive their forces across the Dnipro River and start pushing from here, which is really something that no one would expect. So with that, I hope that does answer that question fairly well. And to be completely honest with y'all, this has taken me by surprise, absolutely. And I never expected that the Ukrainians would ever cross the Dnipro River and create a legitimate foothold. It's logistically incredibly difficult. It's very unlikely, at least in practicality, that it would succeed, and yet we're seeing it happen right now, which is showing one of two things. Either the Russian forces in the area are non-existent, so the Ukrainians are facing no resistance whatsoever, or they're in incredibly bad straits, and the Ukrainians are pushing them back with little to no resistance whatsoever. Either way, the situation in the Kherson area appears to be detrimental for the Russians. It seems as though there may not even be any Russian forces here, except for some small garrisons to hold down the area and at least keep a lookout for anything that may be going on. But with that, I hope that does answer that question fairly well. And that was a very good question, by the way. I like that one. Really good one. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of this segment.
And also, real quick, just want to remind everyone, tonight we're not doing super chats. So if you do have a question for us, just at Enforcer Matt and send me your live chat in the live chat, and I'll add it to the spreadsheet. And also, by the way, Enforcer, I'm not sure if you have seen it yet, but it looks like some images have come out. I don't know if you showed them earlier, of the drone attack against Russia's sea fleet on Twitter.
We have not seen it. Do we have them on our Twitter?
Yes, I liked it. So go to our likes tab on our profile page, and you'll see it.
Let's see here. Likes tab. Let's go
It's
to
on profile
and
and
likes. So let's see here. Is this the only one, or is there several? Oh, this is the
That's
only
the only image I've seen thus far. But if you punch in some search terms about it, you might be able to find some more.
Let's see. Search terms about it. I don't really do Twitter much. So
Peep the Twitter?
Peter, the Twitter's here.
so where in the world would I need to move my mouse to do a search on this thing?
So click out of this picture here. And go over there to that search bar you see up at the top right and punch in Sevastopol.
Sebastopol.
Look, I'm teaching the Enforcer how to use Twitter live on air.
All right, so top.
Oh, these look kind of old. Punch the latest up there at the top.
Oh, oh my God. This is on April 10th. They said, oh my God, the mosque was spotted. A few days later, it sank. So this is like the last video anyone took of it leaving port. That's a nice one. But anyways, let's go to the latest. Okay, all right. That's a cool one to start with. All right, that's not Sevastopol. I don't think we're finding anything at all on Sebastopol.
Yeah, I don't see anything actually. Go to the like our home page, like the home button, and see if anything new's popping up. There's like Kyiv Independent reporting on it on the top one.
Let's see.
No pictures though.
So it looks like the only one that's around right now is this one from OSINT Technical, which shows some smoke billowing from the port area. And you know, this picture is giving us just enough that we might be able to figure out where the smoke's coming from. So let's take a moment.
There it is on the right. They've geolocated it on the comments over there.
Oh, on God? Wait, hang on.
Yep.
Dang it. Wait a minute. Where in the world did we go to the second picture?
Well, actually, that's a good question. I think I'm going to click out.
Here we
go.
go.
There you go.
Where is this? Let me go to the Google Maps and let's see where the smoke's coming from. So, let's try and look at that picture. So there's a little marina. Gotta find the little marina. This looks like it's on... Okay, so let's try and face... Dang, man. I don't know how to turn this thing either.
Everyone's saying, let's see, Bombardier Global 6000. I'm not sure what they're saying that about, though.
Let's see here. Let me look around. Maybe we can find this thing. So here's a part of the Russian fleet. That's a part of their base. Yeah, let's see here. There's a marina around here somewhere. There's got to be. Let's see here. Does it give coordinates? It doesn't give coordinates. Wait a minute. That little dot, though, that might actually be where it is. Let me go down to that large inlet down here, and let's see if we can find it here. And a little marina. Nope. Let's go down to this one.
Let's see. Trister1 says, the other on this thread, there's a video of the strike.
Hold up. We found it. Here it is right here. Yeah, we found it. So this is the little marina. And so the picture was taken. And let's go back to that picture. This one right here was taken from...
there's the video.
Yeah, we've seen the video. But
Oh.
It appears that the picture was taken somewhere in this building right here, this one. And they were looking over the marina and down this direction. And it appears that the smoke was coming from around here, at least in this general area. As you can see kind of right there, it was on the right side of the inlet. And there's kind of a tall building there with a red light. So let's see if we can find a tall building with a red light. Moving a little further down. And... Wait a minute. Oh, nope. Wait a minute. That's not it. Let's see. We're looking for a tall building with a red light. There it is, right there. So yes, this is the place. And it appears that the fire is actually coming well before that red light. And this appears to be a little Russian naval base with some coastal boats at it.
Oh.
So it looks
Oh, no.
it looks like based off of what we're able to get right now, that smoke is most likely coming from one of the Russian coastal boats, or I guess you could say the frigates, that has been hit by this drone. So now we've gotten it. The Russians are saying there is no damage, and there may be no damage to the fleet itself or any of these ships. It may have been to the port facilities that help to support these ships inside the port, or it may actually be the boats themselves, because the smoke is pretty indescript. We don't know exactly where it's coming from over there, but that smoke is certainly coming from this facility right here.
That's wild. I wonder if they sunk any of them.
I wonder if they did, the Russians will probably be able to salvage them because they probably are in very shallow water right now, so they'll only sink like halfway, and some of them will be sticking out of the water. So they might be able to try and refloat some of them, but that's, once again, if the Russians have the resources, the availability, or the money, which they probably don't have all three of them. So we'll probably see that there's just a Russian boat sank in the middle of Sebastopol harbor that just sits there for the rest of the war. But yeah, now we know exactly what we're looking at right here. That is where the smoke's coming from, and that's probably where the explosion in the other video also came from right here, which we'll also click on. Well, actually, we'll enlarge it, and here's the video.
Oh.
Actually, that looks like a totally different location. Because this doesn't have the little red light thing around it. Doesn't look like it's near the inlet. That looks like it's at something else. So I think that picture of the smoke and this explosion may be in two totally different areas of the port, because the Black Sea Fleet isn't just in one spot in this port. It's actually in multiple spots. It's not just here. If we move down to this inlet, almost the entirety of this inlet is reserved for the Russian Navy. And we can see some of their ships like this one right here. We can see one of their training ships, I believe, right there. It's a sailing ship. And then we can see what appears to maybe be the... I'm trying to think of what the name... The Omsk that was sunk in Berdyansk last year, and a couple of the other ships. So this may be where that explosion occurred, but we can't really tell because there wasn't really enough landmarks in that video to be able to see specifically. But still, now we know exactly where the smoke's coming from. It's coming from right there, and we now have a little bit of extra info. And just for everyone on the stream tonight, we're going to make sure to grab this one and copy the link, and now you're going to see how I put down these markers. And we're going to put this one right on the location where it happened, which is right here. And we're going to put Russian port facility smoking. And we'll put that down right there, do that, make it red, and we'll also put a little fire symbol right there to show that it's something on fire. And then this marker, it's kind of inaccurate right now because we don't really know where that one came from. But now we're getting a little bit more information out of the port of Sebastopol, and there are certainly damaged Russian assets there, either the port or the ships. So with that, good to hear that we got a little bit of additional news, and thank you for sharing that with us, Matthew. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our last question of the first question segment goes to Mad Machine, who says, where could Ukraine cross the river with their shiny and new better than the Soviet-era pile of rusty crud held together by Flex Seal museum pieces?
Can you tell me what that one means? Because unfortunately,
Yeah.
I think I lost it in translation.
Let me see. Very, very interesting wordage there. Where could Ukraine cross the river? With their new shiny, new better, I'm really not sure. I'm not sure if he's like taking a shot at the Ukrainian equipment or what. I don't understand that one, so we'll have to pick another one. And the other,
Okay.
and the other one goes to David L. He says, Enforcer, how far is it from the reported beachhead to Sevastopol?
The reported beachhead to Sebastopol, that would be a long distance, a very long one actually. As the crow flies, which means that we would start there, and we will draw a straight line down to the marker in the center of Sebastopol. So we'll say that this right here, this little square is Sebastopol. Let's see, we'll put down a left click. That would be 145 miles as the crow flies from the area where the Ukrainian beachhead is on the southern end of the Dnipro River down to Sevastopol. And of course, that's not including that the Ukrainians will have to, of course, travel on land kind of into the Armyansk area and then down into Crimea. So I would say in reality, with the ground they'll have to cover, most likely around 200 miles, 230 miles. But in a straight line, only 145 miles. So not that far. Actually, when you put that into perspective, and I was just thinking about this, Matthew, just to give a bit of a perspective as to how small Russian progress is, I think from Birmingham to Nashville, it's a longer distance. And
be.
it is, actually. You could drive all the way from Birmingham to, like, 20 miles south of Franklin to the area around Columbia, and that would be 148 miles. To kind of give you a bit of scale as to, I guess you could say, how small these battlefields are. And also, another thing, while we're at this, the city of Bachmut. Let's measure that real quick. So the Russians, ever since they've crossed the Bachmut River, just to give a perspective of how small their advances have been there, and everyone's acting like it's the end of the world sometimes. From the Bachmut River to the train station, that is a whole 1 mile, a whopping 1 mile. And at the farthest they've made it right now, it's about 1.5 miles. If I went to, let's say Birmingham, where we're from, where we live, and I measure out 1.5 miles here, that means that the Russians made it from, what's this building here? The Innovation Depot. It's the Innovation Depot. Down to about, let's see here. That would be down to the Schloss Furnace. Just to give a little bit of a measurement of scale. That's how far the Russians have made it getting over the Bachmut River into Bachmut. And when you put that into actual relatable scale, that's not far at all, really. I mean, like, that's like maybe a 3-minute car drive.
Yeah, that's not too far.
Yeah, that's not far at all. And hell, man, I would hate to be fighting in the Schloss Furnace because you get eaten by the ghosts. Like, you get eaten by the ghouls and crap that live there. But anyways, with that.
Also, real quick, got some interesting developments in the live chat. I saw Seba say the Independent newspaper is reporting that the Makarov is on fire.
The Makarov? That's
what they're saying.
Makarov? Wait, hang on now. That's a juice. 1 second. We gotta go get the Admiral Makarov here. The Admiral Makarov is one of Russia's newest frigates. You can see a picture of it right here.
Oh boy.
Oh buddy. But I have to say this real quick. They did say that the Admiral Makarov was destroyed nearly by MLRS earlier in the war, and it turned out that it was not the Makarov. I think it was some other ship, or it may have not even been hit at all. So we're going to hold out on saying that one definitively until some picture evidence comes out of the damage, but it may have been the Admiral Makarov. I wouldn't doubt it. I don't know where
Punch in is the Admiral Makarov on fire in Google and see what pops up.
Let's see. Is the Admiral Makarov hit? Let's see. Let's see. They said, like, right there, that's what I'm talking about. On the 6th of May, they said that the Admiral Makarov had been badly damaged by Ukrainian missiles. And then from what we saw, it wasn't. So, let's see. It looks like we don't have anything new on it right now. So, yeah. It doesn't appear that anyone's saying that it has been hit yet. But of course, you know, we are, I think, one of the first ones to the port attack news because it happened 10 minutes before the stream even went live. So we're going to keep an eye on that, see if it was hit. If anyone gets any pictures or videos, make sure to share them with us over our Twitter, and we'll make sure to show them on the stream so that way we can try and piece together what more is happening or what kind of damage has been caused to the Black Sea Fleet in Sebastopol, because it does appear that it is getting more and more serious and more significant and more damaging for Russian forces as the news keeps coming in. And so with that, I hope... did we even answer the last question?
Yeah, I think we answered the last question. You were rounding that one out when I mentioned it.
Oh yeah, so with that, we are now rounding out that question segment, and we're now moving into the frontline news. Starting off in the Northeast, where we saw near the front lines today, in the area of Koltonorivka, we saw that a rabbit survived a missile attack. Out of everything that could have survived this incredibly devastating airstrike on this village, a rabbit survived. And so here's the clip. We can see the firefighters blasting some of the burning debris with the fire hose and moving on into the rubble. To try and clear out citizens that may be injured. Well, you now see the rabbit in its cage right there, and somehow, out of all of this, the rabbit has survived, which is very lucky for this little thing. And you see the firefighters looking at the rabbit as it continues to crawl around in its little cage. They're now moving further into the building, and we can see what appears to be some kind of a kitchen, perhaps, with a blown-out door. Now see them removing some of the rubble, still smoking. And also trying to extinguish some of the smoldering ruins and wreckage. And we can see this guy here drinking water like I do. I drink water at least a gallon at a time, and this man right here, he's doing it my way. he's drinking water man force away. And also, don't know if anyone notices this is a Polish donated fire truck, which is great to know that the Polish, of course, have not only been providing frontline support with weapons, tanks, APCs, and things like that, but they've also been providing things behind the lines to help save the lives of citizens, like this fire truck right here. Great to see. We now see this firefighter moving back into the wreckage.
Also, when you're done with this footage, I've got some more footage of that incident.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You can still see them putting out the flames. And the battle still rages on while these firefighters continue to try and save lives behind the lines. And now we have heard that there is even more news coming in about the Sebastopol attack. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so go to Twitter, and thanks to Trister1, he sent it to us. It's a couple different tweets, and it's in the DMs.
It's in the DMs. So let's go to the DMs. And, which one?
Ron Brown.
Ron Brown. He shares. Let's see. And this... Let's see, we'll go to this one. It's blurred out a little bit when you see some anti-aircraft fire. Russians firing into the sky, mostly trying to shoot down the drones. We haven't seen one of them explode yet, which shows apparently they have not been successful, at least at that part of the video. And now we can hear explosions in the distance as the drones are hitting the port. And so, one second, let me close that one down. This one looks like an identical video, and this one looks like the one we saw earlier, where the explosion happened at the port. Yeah, that's the same one. So it looks like we got one new video, but that seems to be it for now. And we haven't seen the extent of the damage yet. But if anyone can find a video that shows us the extent of the damage, we would love to see it. And so with that, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And with that, we're going to be moving on down into the southern area of Svatove, where we saw that the Spartan unit has received some BTR-4s. This came from the Ukrainian military website, the Defense Industry of Ukraine, showing that the Spartan Brigade has received some BTR-4s. I just thought I would mention this because it is interesting to see that apparently the Ukrainians are still producing BTR-4s in some numbers to be able to issue even more units with them, which is exceptional because the BTR-4s do deliver a decent amount of firing power, and we have seen these BTR-4s in several occasions. For example, the Battle of Mariupol, able to destroy Russian main battle tanks like T-72Bs with these main guns. And so great to see that they've gotten some more of them to the Spartan Brigade, and hopefully this will help in their effectiveness in fighting against the Russians in the Kharkiv area. We're now going to be moving out of that area and down towards Chernopopivka, where we saw some impressive works done by some Ukrainian snipers. Now, the video says that this was a shot that was 2,200 meters. I don't know if that is true or not, because I believe 2,200 meters is well over a mile. So 2,200 meters to miles, that would be 1.3 miles. And let's look at the longest shot ever made by a sniper. And that would be at 3,540 meters, or 3,871 yards. And it appears that the name was withheld on this one. Also, it looks like the Ukrainian National Guard has actually gotten up in the top 3. The name was withheld, but they made a shot at 2,710 meters. So it's not out of the question to say that they were able to make this shot.
Yes, бежит,
But it looks like the guys are on the move, so that would make the shot very difficult.
Сидят левее.
Wait a minute, they stopped. And they fired. Oh, they did. Oh my god! That's got to be one of the longest shots. Wait a minute, we got to see the top longest shots now, because I got to know, what would that actually be on the list? So, let's see, 2,400, 2,300. So, this would be about number 10 on the list. Number 10, number 11 on the list if we put this up. Wait a minute, no, wait a minute, hang on. It said about 2,200 meters. So it would actually be about right here around number 8 or number 9. Dang, that's crazy. That may be the longest shot we've seen of the war so far, rather than the guy right here, who apparently on November of 2022, with a Snipex Alligator, you know, the ungodly long sniper
Massive
rifle,
gun.
was able to hit a guy at 2,700 meters, or 2,900 yards. Man, if only I could
Nice.
shoot that far. I would be blown away if I could shoot that far. But dang, I guess with a Snipex Alligator though, I guess the wind doesn't really mean much. I think the Coriolis effect means more when you're firing that rifle than the wind does, but still, quite a shot. And it looks like some Ukrainian snipers are certainly getting up there in range. Let's see if they're not on the list anywhere else. It looks like the United States holds the records for the most long shots up here in the top 21 at least, but it doesn't appear that the United States is in the top 5 at all. Actually, it appears that the longest shot ever was made by a Canadian firing a Macmillan TAC 50. I've never heard of that one before, but apparently he holds the longest shot in the world at 3,540 meters. So, I mean, the Ukrainians are getting on up there, and that is impressive to see the accuracy of a Ukrainian sniper on film getting on up into the top 10 easily, almost without any effort. But with that, we're going to be moving on from that. I would not like to be anywhere near this guy or know that he's in the area, because hell, I mean, like, a drone can fly that far. This guy will just shoot you from that far. You sit there and stop walking and you're down. But with that,
Man, make sure he's on your side. Jeez.
yeah, man, I mean, like, you know, sit there and go, hey man, you like Voss? You want some bush or something, man? Like, you know, I want to be the biggest friends with you, man, because I mean, like, hell, the Russians could be 3 miles away and this guy is going to literally shoot the cigarette out of their mouth. But with that,
True that.
we're going to be moving on from that clip. Impressive work by that sniper there. We don't know his name, but he's done an amazing job. And we're now going to be moving on down into the area of the northern, I guess you could say the northern area of the Bachmut battlefield, starting off with this little clip where we saw the 109th hitting some Russian artillery. Yeah, we gotta mute the music because it is dramatic. But the 109th Brigade always delivers. We can see some Russian artillery right here, and they appear to be Mr. Bs, I would assume. And they're about to make these Mistas be gone. We're about to watch the artillery rounds come in any minute now. And we can see the first one come in directly to the right side of the artillery piece, and we can see that the truck's ammunition immediately catches on fire, exploding, destroying the truck, and of course destroying the artillerist's hope of ever using these pieces most likely again. You can see the truck burning out, but the Ukrainians are not going to leave it at that. They have to make sure that the pieces are also destroyed as well, and we're probably about to see another shot come in here in a minute. We can see the truck continuing to burn down as the fire has now reached the fuel tanks. And with that, that's the end of the clip. And we actually didn't see another shot come in, so it looks like they just left it at burning down the truck and the ammunition, and that was about it. But still, nice to see. We're going to be moving on from the 109th Brigade's strike on a small artillery battery and down into the area of Bachmut itself. And over the past 24 hours, of course, the map did not update before the stream, so let me make sure to double check that it's updated now. Over the past 24 hours, we have seen that Russian forces have made really no meaningful movements in the area of Bachmut today. It does appear that they were able to take one city block within the center area of the city, but once again, that was in no man's land, and it appears to have not affected Ukrainian defensive lines or Ukrainian controlled territory as of today. Moving on from that, however, we saw in the most northern area of the Bachmut battlefield near Krasnopolivka that a Russian tank was destroyed by the 45th Separate Artillery. There is music playing on this, so unfortunately we have to mute it, but we can see the Russian tank right here. It appears to be some kind of a T-80 series tank, sitting in the field and looking around. Of course, the drone is already calling in artillery, and we can see the first shot landing about 30 yards off to the left, second shot landing directly beside the tank 5 meters away, and we can now see that one of the Russian crew members is now bailing out of the vehicle. We have not seen them all bail out, the third shot hitting directly on top of the tank, and most likely ensuring that the rest of the crew will bail, or the rest of the crew will no longer have the chance to bail. We do see the commander. It appears that he is climbing out of the turret. And we see one guy lying down. It appears that the other two crew members are getting him away from the tank. Another shell has not landed yet. And we can see the next shell land. It landed in front of the tank. These guys were incredibly lucky, as the angle that they were standing at near that tank saved them from getting filled with a shrapnel. And it appears that they're now trying to figure out what to do with the third crew member further back. The shells are still landing, and it appears that a random infantryman has now run up to try and help the crew, as the tank is still being battered by Ukrainian artillery and has been knocked out for all intents and purposes. We can now see a small amount of smoke and fire billowing from the tank, showing that it will most likely brew up later on the day and end up being a complete loss. With that, that's the end of the clip, but a huge credit to the 45th Artillery Brigade that knocked out another T-80B. We're now moving on down into Krasnohora, where we saw another direct hit happening in this area as well, this one by a kamikaze drone. When you see the BTR that it appears they'll be heading here in the video, it is going down on its final path and slamming directly into the top of the BTR with an RPG. The BTR's armor is paper thin, and especially paper thin on the top of the APC, so we can certainly assume this vehicle has been destroyed by the RPG-7 hitting the top roof. We can now see a small amount of smoke coming out of the APC, and any of the remaining crew will most likely be bailing out and abandoning the vehicle. That's the end of the clip, but another APC lost by Russian forces that are holding this northern flank. Meanwhile, on the western ridgeline behind the city of Bachmut, we saw that another T-72B3 had been destroyed. We didn't see this on film, the destruction process of the tank, but we do see that the T-72B3 has apparently been left abandoned, sitting on top of a Ukrainian trench. And once again showing that while the Russians are desperately trying to push through this western ridgeline area, it is posing incredibly difficult and incredibly taxing on their armored forces, which are already heavily depleted and losing some of their best armored forces on this ridgeline as we speak. We're now going to be moving on into the next bit of news we saw on this western ridgeline as I stammer. Now I'm in the King's speech. I'll have a stammer. But anyways, you can see the Russians being bombed on the ridgeline near Kromove.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hit him with a flute. But anyway, we see the bomb.
Whenever you hear that flute come out, you know a trap beat's about to come right behind it.
Oh, you know it. I mean, you see the bomb will explode in the trench. We now see the Russians discombobulated, not really knowing what to do any longer, and the drone, if it has a second bomblet, may be trying to line up another one. You see some Russians moving on. The video pauses to go to another point where another bomblet explodes, and it appears that this Russian may have actually ended up getting wounded, although he was in the trench and the bomblet exploded outside of it, giving us an idea he may have been wounded in the neck.
He looks a little weak.
Yeah, he looks a little weak. Weak in the knees. We can see 5 Russians moving down this trench, 5 orcs. We now see the bomblet falling, and this one was a direct hit into the middle of the trench, appearing to have wounded or taken out several Russians. We now see another one falling. And this one, somehow, they curved it right into the trench, getting a couple of other Russians. And it appears that the works of the drones in the Kromove area are certainly helping to stem the tide of any further Russian advances near the Q or the 00506, very hard to read. But with that, we're moving on into the city of Bachmut itself and towards the southern perimeter, where we once again saw snipers at work in the area. And the PSYOPs has returned, throwing in a $69 donation to the fundraiser. We now see the sniper doing his job. It appears that there is no audio right now. We can see him looking into an apartment building somewhere in Bachmut and getting ready to line up his shot. You now see him jiggling the camera around, kind of like the accuracy whenever I fire a rifle. Very jiggly.
This scope doesn't seem very magnified.
Not really. It doesn't really seem that magnified.
I don't see anybody either.
And it looks like he hasn't found anyone yet, but I'm sure he's going to find someone soon. See him moving the scope around, and it appears that a little Russian has popped up right there. Little Russian going, I need to get my cigarettes. And the sniper's about to go, nah. So you see him still lining it up. See him getting ready for the shot. He fires, and he fires a second time. and he goes down. And so he did get
Dang,
him.
how the hell did he make that? Jeez, that was like, he barely took a second to like line the shot up.
Yeah, man. I mean, that guy is a crack shot right there. And with that, that's the end of that clip. And once again, showing the work of the snipers in the city of Bachmut, making sure to pin Russian forces down so that they can't poke their heads out from under cover to see what's going on. We're moving on a little bit further behind where we saw a medical post in Bachmut and what has been going on back there as far as Ukrainian medical assistance teams have been doing. You see they have medics across the facility, and they're making sure to try and take care of the wounded and get them off the battlefield. But that's the end of the clip, and once again showing the great work that the medics are doing behind the lines to make sure that Ukrainian soldiers who have ended up, unfortunately, catching some wounds get off the lines and hopefully get the medical treatment they need. With that, we're moving on well behind the lines to a Ukrainian group that was rotating out of Bachmut today, and it does seem that they were pretty happy to get out of there.
Покидаем Бахмут, нахуй! Сильно уходит. Санчо, блядь, ты рады?
Да, блядь, едем домой.
Несемся просто ебануться, блядь.
And that's the end of the clip. But still, these guys seem really happy to be getting out of Bachmut, and their replacements may or may not be that happy to go into Bachmut. We don't really know, but it's still great to know that they were in there probably for a very long time, maybe a month, and were a part of the reason why the Russians have not taken the city even now. Well, that we're now moving out of the Bachmut battlefield and further on down the line into the stagnant yet very active Donetsk front line. As heavy battles rage across the entirety of it, we don't really ever see frontline changes to ever even note or speak of. Nevertheless, that does not mean that there is a large amount of activity going on in this area, as we once again saw snipers at work, this time from the Omega unit. Oh, that is some juicy music, but when you see the cameraman is in some kind of a trench near a machine gun. You see him putting up some kind of a tripod here. There's some War of the Worlds stuff going on right here. You see him setting up the tripod.
Oh, I'd like to take a picture, Blia.
Bleak. I would like to take up
picture.
Bleak.
This is the Extreme Tourism Company.
And they are extreme, I'd have to say. We can now see him giving the sniper a single bullet, showing his confidence in the ability of the sniper to get it done in one shot.
Oh, that's a lot of water, Blia.
Man, that is a lot. That's bigger than those like smart water jugs there is in the United States in the gas stations. There are at least like a metric liter. We now see this guy watching the sniper scope on his phone. We can now see what the sniper's looking at. We can see the Extreme Tourism Company has so graciously set up a target for the sniper. Very lucky for him. We now see him take the shot, and it appears the Russian went down.
The Russian soldiers do not understand what is happening to them as the thermal displacement of the bullet pierces through the air and makes sure to strike the Russian dead on. We can now see another Russian, much like the clip we saw earlier, making his route around the small cinder block building. The Ukrainians are not hungry for food. They hunt for sport, as we can see the next bullet pierce the sky and rupture the shin of this unfortunate Russian. The Russian then runs and hides in cover, making sure to break sight from the deadly Ukrainian soldier with his precise and killing abilities. The cows and the chickens are completely unfazed, as the Ukrainian was so quiet in his attack that the other animals just did not know. We can now see them looking across the fields, the Ukrainians confidently striking at Russians from a distance, as their deadly rifles, built into every Ukrainian, give them the upper hand. We can now see the Russian right there, and it appears that they got another one. It is absolutely incredible to see the rare Ukrainian sniper in action. As the seasons begin to warm, the Ukrainian snipers begin to return back to the fields to continue their sport hunt. With that is the end of this video, and I have to say, it is absolutely incredible to see such things happening in the wilds of Ukraine.
With that, we're going to be moving on from that clip and on into our next
I like
bit.
that quick transition back to normal voice from that voice.
Yeah, it's almost like I pre-recorded that. But anyways, we're moving on into Novoselivka, where we saw that the Ukrainians have been removing some equipment from the war zone. Oh, that is copyrighted. I heard that little twang of the guitar, and I knew we were in trouble. But we can see them getting some tanks. We can see them getting some stuff. Quite a lot of stuff, really. You see them getting a little crappy MTLB right there. Ew! Oh my god, that thing was terrible. It's rusted over. It really is rusted over. Ew! I don't even know what this thing is. I don't think it's an MTLB. It's something else, but that thing is ungodly in bad shape. It's terrible. And oh, they got a little puppy. Oh, that's cute.
Oh.
We now see them riding behind a BMP-2. We can also see them riding behind some kind of a tracked truck, pulling off a burned out Mista S and an MTLB. And that's the end of the clip, but you can see that the Belarusian volunteers are, of course, nabbing everything they can off the lines to see if there's any spare parts they can use or to just get it away from the Russians. With that, we're moving on down into the Avdiivka area, where we also saw Russian forces blown away again today. Wait a minute. Hold up. Alright, Governor, what's going on here? We can see a Russian squad moving in a trench. And we see the bomblet strike, and a couple of Russians went down. And it appears that this may actually be a repeat of an earlier video.
This
And
gives
it
me
is.
like ant farm type vibes to it. You know, like those little ant farm things you get as a kid, like
Yeah.
with little like trails through them and everything.
Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? I would have to agree with that heavily. But with that is the end of this video because it is a duplicate of the last one, and that didn't actually happen. So we're going to be deleting that because it was actually further up the line. And with that, we're moving on down into Pisky, where we saw that the 35th Brigade was able to blow away a T-80 today. You see the T-80 right there when you hear some kind of an 8-bit song playing in the background. We can now see the T-80 backing up. We don't know what variant of the T-80 it is, but we do know that it will be the destroyed variant of the T-80. When you see it still backing up, this is in sped up speed, and we can now see it getting hit. We can now see it getting hit a second time, and maybe even a third time. We didn't get to see it hit a third time, and it appears that it was actually limping off the field a little bit, so we don't really know if it got out of the way of fire or not, but it did get hit twice, and the damage was most likely significant. With that, we're moving on from the area of Pisky and down towards Marinka, a little bit behind the lines, where we saw a Ukrainian kamikaze drone hitting a Russian soldier. You see the drone flipping around and making its way on in. And you see the Russian right there, and
Jeez.
Man, his back was blown out. But with that, that's the end of that clip.
Oh.
Pretty wild to see, and great to know that the Ukrainian kamikaze drone pilots are doing such a job. We're now moving on to the next bit of news we saw near Marinka, where we saw some Russians getting hit near a railroad line. And I guess you could say that these guys got railroaded today. And so with that, here's the clip. And we got that Chad music. I only eat raw meat. Let me mute that real quick. I had to do it. But we can now see them flying on in. We can see a lady giving a speech, and now we can see the drone hitting the Russians. And now we can see another lady giving a speech. And now we can see the drone hitting the Russians right there. And it was 2 for 1. And also we saw some toilet paper go flying. I don't know what this is about. I think this is some kind of congratulations. It says Ruski something. So with that, that's the end of the clip. And it looks like they got the Russians. With that, we're moving on from Marinka and on down to the southern front into some news that we got near Prutny, where we saw the 47th Brigade with some Bradleys. Some M2A2 Bradleys. Look at them go. They got the little digital camo and everything. Now, this brigade is actually somewhere in this area of the front lines. And so when it said the 47th Brigade has Bradleys, this may be our first recorded video evidence of Bradleys actually being present on the front lines. If that is the case, we're seeing a history being made in that clip. And I thought I would just show that as the last thing of the main part of the news tonight. And, of course, It's been an amazing night from start to finish. It really has. I mean, like, then that's one of the best ways to end out our news segment for the night, because who in the hell would have ever thought that a year and really 424 days ago, there would be M2 Bradleys on the front lines of the Ukrainian armored units. No one would have really believed that. And no one would have believed that even this far into the war, that this channel would have continued to fundraise so much to help save Ukrainian lives, and would currently be sitting at, from what I can tell, $6,520. We're $1,520 above tonight's goal, and I have to say, it is unbelievable to think that we've been able to do all of this for so long, and it really does blow me away. I got to thank every single one of y'all for coming tonight and watching this news. We're about to be going into the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky, and of course wrapping up the news segment for the night and moving into the question segment for the rest of it. But of course, it is unbelievable to think about how special of a community this has been. Of course, united around the cause of supporting Ukraine, and also a few other things at times, like the Taiwanese news, and for a very small while, the Sudanese news. It is
Very short
a
while.
very
on
short
that
while.
one.
That was maybe like 5 minutes, but it is absolutely unbelievable to think that folks like William Hayes, who just put in $100 into tonight's fundraiser, have been able to help us to make this channel into something really unique and special. Because while a lot of people always attribute this channel and the Enforcer name with being an incredibly unique channel on YouTube, of course, not running ads or sponsors or anything like that on our normal live stream and just getting to the news, y'all have really been what has made this channel special through y'all support to these fundraisers, to what y'all have added in the live chat section, to the varied stories that a lot of y'all have had, from workers at SpaceX to CEOs of companies to people who've been in the military to people from all walks of life. It's been absolutely amazing so far, the journey that the stream has gone through, and it's unbelievable to think that we're still here covering the news with all of y'all, the thousands of y'all that are watching tonight, and we're even watching right now as history may be in the process of being created, as Ukrainian forces have now created a foothold on the Kherson River, well, not the Kherson River, the Dnipro River near Kherson, and are also causing some devastating damage to the Black Sea Fleet. And so, without further ado, we're now going to be moving to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky, and then we'll be moving on into the question segment. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech. And let me close that down. Let me get that up there and turn it up.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні я хочу зосередитись на словах вдячності. Перше – воїнам. Усім, хто зараз в бою, на позиціях, в бойових завданнях, Авдіївка, Маринка, Бахмут, Лиманський напрямок, Сіверський, 35-та окрема бригада морської піхоти імені контр-адмірала Остроградського, 55-та окрема артилерійська бригада, Запорізька Січ, десантники нашої 79-ки, дякую вам, воїни, незмінно хоробрі і міцні. 80-та бригада ДШВ, дякую за зразкове знищення ворога під Бахмутом, молодці хлопці. 54-та окрема механізована бригада імені гетьмана Мазепи, дякую за стійкість, за захист позицій, а отже за захист України. Це важливо розуміти в кожному нашому місті, в кожному селі, всюди, де зараз більш-менш вже тихо, всюди, де сьогодні був просто спокійний, весняний, сонячний день, кожен день такої тиші в тилових областях здобувається нашими воїнами в жорстоких боях на передовій, в щоденних боях. Будь ласка, прошу, шануйте це та завжди допомагайте нашим воїнам, коли це потрібно. Завжди підтримайте державу і оборону так, як це можливо. Друге, подяка рятувальникам, усім нашим працівникам ДСНС, які задіяні в ліквідації наслідків ворожих ударів. Дякую усьому колективу ДСНС. А окремо за роботу саме цього тижня варто відзначити пожежників, наших пожежних рятувальників, сержанта Романа Світличного, сержанта Петра Бондаренка, старшого сержанта Олексія Інгульського, командира відділення 5-го державного пожежного рятувального посту, старшого прапорщика Олександра Іваненка, начальника 13-ї пожежно-рятувальної частини міста Немирів, майора Василя Мельника та підполковника Віктора Кузьменка з Головного управління ДСНС в Полтавській області. Дякую вам. Третє. Наші психологи. Сьогодні в нашій державі професійний день психолога. Я дякую кожному і кожній, хто обрав саме цю професію та присвячує своє життя і, власне, свій час, здоров'ю і спокою інших. Де б ви не працювали, коли б не працювали, за яких би не відбувалося умов, все це сенс роботи психолога завжди шляхетний – допомогти. І дякую тим, хто допомагає. нашим людям. Четвертий пункт, починаючи з 90-х років, саме 23 квітня щорічно відзначається Всесвітній день книги і авторського права. Зараз, коли мільйони наших людей перебувають в різних країнах, коли українські діти живуть, вчаться в інших мовних та культурних середовищах, особливо важливо, мені здається, щоб через українську книгу, українське бачення світу, все це об'єднувало наших людей, зберігало зв'язок з домом. Дякую усім, хто допомагає розповсюдженню нашої книги у світі, хто реалізує такі проекти, як, наприклад, книжки без кордонів. Важкого минулого року було роздано більше ніж 280 тисяч книжок в рамках цього проекту. І 20 країн долучились. Або інший проект «Українські книжкові полички» у майже 40 країнах світу. Дякую всім, хто допомагає. Дякую всім нашим українським видавцям, які продовжують таку роботу. І, звичайно, дякую всім, хто пише українською та про Україну. Нарешті, п'яте, ми продовжуємо готувати кілька важливих міжнародних подій, які можуть дати нашій державі більше міцності, а нашим воїнам більше зброї. Майже щодня відповідна комунікація з партнерами, відповідні завдання для нашої дипломатії, наради, розмови, зустрічі, багато всього. Я дякую всім, хто задійний у такій підготовчій роботі. В абсолютній більшості випадків це невидима для загалу роботи, і так правильно. Саме так це працює. Результат базується на підготовці. Дякую кожному і кожній, хто готує результати для України, уряд, офіс, наші дипломатичні представництва. Дякую всім, хто залучений. Наша перемога в цій війні буде спільною усіх, хто її наближав, усіх, хто воював, працював заради перемоги. Слава кожному українському герою. Слава нашому прекрасному народу. Слава Україні!
And Slava Ukraini. And with that, that is the end of the speech for President Volodymyr Zelensky. And of course, as tradition dictates, that rounds out our news segment for tonight's stream. Of course, I've already given a large part of the speech about how amazing tonight's been and how great it's been to have so many of y'all here with us tonight as we've covered the massive news that has come out in many different categories throughout the entirety of Ukraine. Of course, if you're new to this channel and you did enjoy it from start to finish, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the kind of news that we run on this channel every single night, the exact same way, 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, from the beginning to the end. Of course, thank you all so much once again for coming, and we're going to be moving on into the question segment, of course, calling out any top donors we've had in between the last one and this one, and then we'll be getting straight into live chat questions for about the next 40 minutes or so. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so before we get into our polls and live chat questions, I'm proud to report that we're at $6,072 on the fundraiser. So absolutely knocked it out of the park tonight. And we have had a few more top donors since the last time we called them out. And we have a 100 from William Hayes, a 100 from Sharon Flynn, a 69 from Psyops. Nice. It's good to see Psyops. And we also have a 50 from Greg Carrier. So big thanks to all of you four and everyone else as well for helping us to reach that goal. Another successful fundraiser in the books. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to say it's absolutely amazing to know that we've been able to raise $6,725 for tonight's fundraiser. Absolutely unbelievable. And I want to thank every single one of y'all once again for making that possible, because I don't think there's any other channel out there on YouTube that's been able to run fundraisers like these, and it has nothing really to do with the channel. It has to do with the people who are a part of this channel. And I got to thank every single one of y'all who is in the LSA for helping to make this thing possible. And so with that, I hope that does address the fundraiser tonight fairly well. And with that, we are on into the questions. And so with that, what do we got?
All right, and our very first poll that we have says today, the Russians and the Wagner troops got into a large shootout in the Luhansk Oblast. And what are your thoughts? 89% said, oh, what a shame, not sorry. 7% said unsure. 2% said I'm mixed on this one. And 2% said not good at all. And I will say it certainly wasn't good for the Russians and the Wagners, because apparently some people got clapped. But you know, I'm with the 89% that said, what a shame. Because really, what a shame it is. Those poor people can't get along with each other. Who knew prisoners couldn't get along with soldiers, or at least wannabe soldiers? But Enforcer, what say you?
It's terrible. It's terrible. Who would have thought that druggies would sit there and be violent hostile. Be violent hostile.
Yeah, it's almost like they're criminals or something.
It's almost like they are fried, you know? Like, I don't know. I mean, you know, this is your brain on drugs. Cracks the egg, puts it in the pan. But yes, I would say that that's not really shocking, and that's just unfortunate. I'm sure the Russian soldiers didn't see it coming, because, you know, who would have ever thought that convicts that were drug addicts that were probably not getting the drugs they needed to, you know, make sure that they didn't go ultra-violent, went ultra-violent. I would have never thought. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, you know what it is. We're on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says the Wagner leader Prigozhin says his army will no longer take prisoners and will quote-unquote kill everyone. And what are your thoughts? 42% said not good, and this is very bad. 41% said, I think nothing has really changed. 15% said fine, Ukraine should do the same, and 3% said unsure. And on this one, I am somewhat tempted to go with the 15%. But at the same time, we don't want to stoop down into the gutter like the Wagner troops and also the Russians. I'm just going to say that I think it's very bad. I'm not really sure if they've taken this strategy all the way yet. You know, we know that Wagner executes Ukrainians wrongfully, but we don't know on how wide of a scale it actually is. So now they're making a point to go out of their way to do it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, it's a really tough decision to make. Of course, I would have to go with the right one, which is to not execute Russian prisoners, because if that starts to become a precedent, you know, that's not really a good look. But I get where people are coming from who are saying we should. But at the same time, I feel like we should take the high road on that, because then if we start doing everything the Russians are doing, what are we really fighting for? Because we're fighting just to be like them. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one says, world military spending has reached a record 2.24 trillion. And what do you conclude from this? 70% said the world is preparing for war, 10% said unsure, 14% said it's due likely to inflation, and 7% said it's nothing at all and no inference. And I would say that since it has reached a record number, there is definitely a reason for it. I would say, honestly, it's a combination of world tensions boiling over and people worried that a war will break out and people are preparing. And it's also partially due to inflation as well, because obviously as inflation rises, the number of spending is also going to rise as well, naturally. But I would say it's probably more on the side of preparing for war. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, let me think. Can you reread that prompt again real quick?
Brain fart. But
Yeah.
The question says, world military spending has reached a record 2.24 trillion. And what do you conclude from this?
I would have to conclude that it shows that the world is certainly a tense place. And I would honestly have to say it's not really that uncalled for, especially considering what we're seeing. We're seeing rising tensions around the entirety of the world. And so a lot of people, a lot of countries for that matter, are trying to prepare for the worst. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one says, Japan has deployed air defense systems for potential North Korean satellite launch. And what are your thoughts? 81% said North Korea is going to mess around and find out. 6% said unsure, and 2% said Japan is overreacting, while 11% said nothing bad will happen. And it's probably simply an overreaction by Japan, to be completely honest. I doubt anything's really going to happen with that launch, because North Korea wouldn't be that stupid. And we know before that the missile that was supposedly heading for Hokkaido was actually not heading for Hokkaido. It's simply a fact that Japan lost track of the missile, and they did that as a precaution. But Enforcer, what say you?
Can you reread that prompt again real quick?
Japan has deployed air defense systems for potential North Korean satellite launch, and thoughts?
I would say that it's good to know that they're doing such a thing, because of course the North Koreans firing a missile directly over Japan is certainly not a great thing, and is definitely not respecting their sovereignty. So if something like that similar was to happen again, I would find really nothing wrong with the Japanese shooting down the missile. So with that, hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And that was our last poll, I believe. Yes, it was our last one. And while I'm at it, big shout out to Vitaly. He put in a $69 donation, not a
Nice.
super chat, to the fundraiser, and also nice. But Enforcer, what are you trying to say?
I was just trying to say nice. And so with that, let's get on into the questions.
All right, and our first question goes to Margaret Hemsley, who says, "My question is it a war crime to kill civilians who try to kill soldiers? For example, babushkas who fed orcs poisoned food."
I don't think that's a war crime. It's more so on the Russians that they were eating food from a civilian and the food was poisoned. Because who's to say that wasn't intentional? That was just bad cooking, and then they ended up getting poisoned that way. Who's to not say that was the case? So I would honestly have to say that they shouldn't be executing those people or anything similar. Because why in the hell are the Russians eating food from random people in the first place? That is really weird, especially in a military sense. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I saw Stony Deadrock say they putting up a satellite. I think that was a question. And as far as we know, it's in the works. We don't really know when North Korea is going to actually launch it. It's supposedly their first recon satellite. So we know how North Korean technology is pretty far behind. So unless China has given them something, it's unlikely it's anything really important. But I think the bigger concern is that they could have a mishap and it falls into Japan's territory, which is what they're preparing to do. Japan's given the order to shoot it down if it falls over their land. And like we said the other night, that's understandable because, North Korea is getting really out of hand right now. But Enforcer, would you like to weigh in?
Yes, I have to find a video real quick. Let's see. 15. So I have to find this because I must show it. Oh, here we go. So, I'm just going to show this clip. This is a clip from 2013 showing the North Korean Air Force. That right there is a MiG-29. This is considered the prime of North Korea's Air Force. This is the most advanced aircraft they have at the moment. And we can see little Rocket Man here. He's really excited about all this. And we can hear the band playing the 1940s music as best they can. So after that, we see a MiG-21. These went into service in the Soviet Union in 1955, still flying in the North Korean Air Force in 2013. After that,
could the lady be any more dramatic about this? Jeez.
She could be. After that, we see a MiG-17 taking off. And you'll see how this circles back to the satellite in a minute. The MiG-17 entered service in the late 40s, by the way, just letting y'all know. We can now see a MiG-23. These entered service around the 1960s, really the 1970s, actually. 1974-ish. And real quick, gotta speed this forward. This is... One second, gotta wait for the MiG-21 SMT to land. This is an Ilyushin 28. This is considered a North Korean frontline bomber. This entered service in 1947, and there are, I believe, around 24 of these still in service in the North Korean Air Force. There is literally no such thing as a computer in this thing. Everything is analog. Just so you know how old it is.
So this would be like an air show for the U.S.
It would be. So skipping forward a little bit again. We now see a North Korean training plane. I don't even know what kind of variant this is. It is a training plane, however. Skipping forward from that. We can also see that they have some Su-25s just around. But this was a demonstration in 2013 of the North Koreans, Democratic People's Republic of Korea's Air Force. And suffice to say, it's not really advanced at all. A large majority of their aircraft are 1950s, 1960s vintage. And to think that a country like North Korea somehow would ever have the ability to make a successful satellite is kind of a little wild when you think about it. Honestly, if it's based entirely off of their internal industry and the ability of the North Koreans to produce anything, this satellite will mostly have the abilities of an American satellite from the late 1950s or the early 1960s at best. There really is no internal industry inside of North Korea that develops anything advanced, because of course all of these aircraft were either bought from the People's Republic of China or from the Soviet Union back when that existed. So just using this video from 2013 of the North Korean Air Force to kind of reiterate the idea, the satellite, if they're launching one, it's not going to be an impressive satellite by any means, unless the Chinese built it for them and then gave it to North Korea. So with that, hope that
Why
does.
does Kim Jong Un in this video look like when he's like can you find the part where he's looking at the plane going down the runway?
Yeah, I think I can. It was at the beginning, wasn't it? Right here?
I think it was a little later in the video.
Right here?
Somewhere. Why is he looking like he just spotted like a delicious snack or something?
Dude.
Oh, is that a Twinkie?
Dude, this is a song that plays in Popeye the Sailor Man when he finds a can of spinach, but instead of finding a can of spinach, he found himself some croissant. he said, oh, look, there's a croissant down there. And the wife is like, don't you think you could hold off on a couple of more of those? And he's like, no, more croissant.
That's his wife?
Yeah, that was his wife. Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, that's kind of nuts. But, then again, when you can have anyone executed, you can kind of have any wife you want, Simps start rolling out. Autobots roll out. But anyways, and also I like it how he's the only, not trying to be rude to him or anything, he's not that bad of a guy or anything, but he's the only fat guy here. Everyone else can hardly fit in their uniforms. They're about to, slip out of their uniforms because they're so thin. Meanwhile, he's the only one who has any kind of bulk. America's really lucky in that way that we're always talking about how obese people are getting in this country instead of like in North Korea, where everyone was talking about how thin people are getting there and there's hardly any food. But anyways, with that, also someone said that's his sister. That is not his sister. You'll know his sister when you see her. That's actually his wife, weirdly enough.
I was thinking it was his sister when you said that. That's why I was shocked.
Here, I'll show a picture of Kim Jong-un's sister to show that is a different person. Here is Kim Jong-un's sister right here. And as you can see, totally different look.
She's definitely different.
Yeah, definitely different. I believe that his wife actually came from the, I believe it's like the Korean Electric Ensemble, which is kind of like the North Koreans' hottest hit band. And she was one of the singers, and then he married her. I think that's the story about how she ended up being his wife. But anyways, with that,
Jerry S said, "Sister equals wife in North Korea." No, you're getting confused with Alabama.
Yeah,
North Korea.
You're getting confused with the with sweet Alabama down here. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed the whole satellite concern fairly well. But yeah, I wouldn't really expect for a North Korean satellite to be advanced at all unless it was built by someone else like the Chinese. And even then, how advanced would it be? Look at China. But anyways, well then again, look at China. They're actually kind of catching up a little bit. But then again, well, wait, hang on. I gotta go pull this up off screen. I couldn't say that one aloud because I've got to get to it and show you all the pictures. Let's see, one second. I gotta find the pictures. I know I'll be able to find it if I just see it. Oh, man, wait a minute. Oh, here we go. So, 29 people were killed in China. That's a great way to start off a statement. And let me just go to the Reuters article to show y'all. 29 people were killed in China in 2007. This was a while ago, but things really haven't changed because the concrete that Chinese buildings are made out of is actually hardly concrete. It's usually just like packed rocks or something similar. And there even have been pictures of some railroad bridges being made with corn on the cob being mixed into the concrete. I couldn't find the picture immediately, but they are out there. So while the Chinese look very advanced on the surface, a lot of that is kind of their development is so rapid, they really can't keep up with it. So a lot of the stuff that they do is kind of just on surface level looking good. Kind of like this bridge that actually ended up killing 29 people when it collapsed. But anyways, with that, hope we addressed that poll fairly well. And, well, actually questioned poll fairly well. I forgot what it even was. But with that, we were on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Enigma, who says, "Does Lavrov have any children living in the U.S.?"
I don't know if Lavrov has any children at all. So let's pull it up. Lavrov's kids. That sounds like Pavlov's house. Lavrov's kids. Let's see. At Katerina Lavrova, the Simps are about to start rolling out. Goodness. Goodness, I know that's about to happen. So here's my question, though. I'm not going to lie. She's not that bad looking. How in the world did she come from that?
Yeah, how's that work?
I'm just saying. Good God. My life is hell.
You know what he kind of looks like?
What?
He kind of looks like Jeremy Clarkson if he was Russian. Like, not an insult, just kind of has the same kind of like features going on.
You know what he kind of looks like? He looks like the Glipgo Glop Glob. And I know I've said that before, but I have to say it again. He looks like the Glipgo Glop Glob. He does not look that great. But moving on from that, let's go find his kids. All of his kids. Let's see here. Alma mater, he was born, signature. What about his family? Actually, it looked normal just in 2004. Man, he has not aged well at all.
Really?
I mean, he's aged rough, like rough. But let's see here. Scroll on down. Doesn't really give a lot of info about his family on the Wikipedia. So it appears that he only has a daughter, at least from what we know. So yep, that's his daughter right there, Katerina Lavrova. That's her.
Where's she live?
Let's pull her up.
Looks like a Business Insider says hit by UK something.
Let's see here. Katerina Lavrova. I don't think that's her. Let's see here. She was born in New York, actually, in 1982. Let's see. Education, she went to Columbia University in New York City. And I would assume, based off of all this, she would have to live in America. She actually is a realtor in Miami.
No way.
Yeah, that's what it says down here on Newsweek. In 2022, she is a realtor in Miami.
Now, isn't that a little ironic?
That's very ironic. That's crazy. So, if any of y'all live in Miami, Katerina Lavrova is down there. Apparently, I don't know if she agrees with her father in any statements or not, but according to Newsweek, she was getting harassed all the way back then last year about her dad being Lavrov. But anyways, with that, hope we answered that question fairly well. That was actually a fairly interesting one. And with that, we are on to the next one. But apparently, Lavrov's daughter is in America.
All right. And Carter said, doesn't Lavrov hate the West? Oh, yes, he does. He does.
Yeah.
He hates it quite well. But anyways, big shout out to Darren Maynard as well. He put in a $120 donation to the fundraiser.
Holy moly.
And my fundraiser screen thing is not updating for some reason. Not sure why. It's stuck at 6,072. So unfortunately, can you see what it's up to now?
I'm going to have to wait for it to update here for a second. Waiting for it to update. Oh, we love $7,016. We did it. Oh, we did it. Impressive, I have to say. And so with that, thank you so much for getting us over $7,000 now, because now that means that we're over $7,000. Nice. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Perry, who says, any news on Kadyrov? It seems he has disappeared from the news.
We haven't really gotten any news on Kadyrov. He has disappeared for the large part. No one really hears about him anymore. Probably because of the schisms that are now starting to occur in between Muslim Russians and Eastern Orthodox Christians inside of Russia, because it appears that ethnic tensions or religious tensions are once again starting to flare up in between the two, and that may be leading to Muslim Chechens, for the large part in Russia, now being put out of the news cycle, even if it's someone like Ramzan Kadyrov. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Miklik. Funnily enough, he says, did you hear that Russia advises citizens to avoid traveling to Canada, citing attacks? Canadians being mean. That can't be. Lols.
I actually haven't heard about that, and real quick, I have to say, if you made that name based off of the joke, I'm going to have to do this for you, because if you made an account that has that joke in it, I got to do it now.
Huh? You want that new acting job, don't you? Well, you better like feet.
But anyway.
Oh my god.
Oh, my name is Mickey Weinstein.
But anyways, moving on.
Hey, Mickey, cool it, buddy.
Mickey, I've got to say, the feet thing's kind of gross. Some of us are into washed up.
I can't say that. That's a little too rude.
No.
But anyways, moving on from that. Wait a minute, hang on, man. You'll know this one. Anyways, there's also but anyways, moving on from that. Pretty wild to hear that Canadians are being a little openly hostile. Who would have ever thought that the Canadians actually have a red line that they won't cross? And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And well, thank you for the support. What the hell? I'm going through my usual spill. It's not even a super chat, but thank you for the comment. That's very interesting to hear, and I actually didn't know that had happened. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And I have a feeling that the Canadians are probably going to be upset. They're probably going to be showing up in the chat. But anyways, our next question goes to Kyle Witt. He says, Matt, what about ferrying the River Fleet via land to Makalev?
Can you reread that one again real quick?
He says, what about ferrying the River Fleet via land to Makalev?
You mean Mykolaiv?
He spelled Makalev.
Well, you know, they could do that. It would probably be safer for them because they could skirt along the coastline here and get into the Dnipro River. So I would say that's most likely more possible than bringing them all the way down from the Zaporizhia area and then through that reservoir. So with that, I hope that does answer that question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to AF Kaplan, who says it's not a nice thing to think about, but could Russia try to use HERS on civilians as human shields to cover their retreat?
They probably won't try to, because we haven't seen them do that before, because the Russians, when they pick up and run, they run. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and with that, I just saw something. I have to address this one, man. I must. Dave Huckleberry said, I can read, don't have to narrate. Well, my boy, you may not know this, but some people watch the stream without watching it. They only listen to it. And so, some people watch it as a show, others watch it as a radio channel, for the large part. And so I must make sure to accommodate the twixt. I must make sure to accommodate the people who actually watch and listen to the stream, and I also must make sure to accommodate the people who only listen with their ears. And so, I know you can read.
Wait a minute. You
What?
know what this calls for?
What does it call for?
Oh, order! I don't need a junior minister telling me how to run
order.
the stream.
Order.
How dare you, sir?
The right honourable gentleman must stand down. He must sit down. Sit down when I'm talking. Sit down. Oh, the little junior minister back there on the back row. Oh, silly you. And then he steps down. Anyways, he steps down, does this whole dramatic thing. But anyways.
Oh, wait a minute. This one works perfectly. You remember this? And I'll still call him Dodgy Dave.
All right, get him out of here.
That worked perfectly.
Oh man. But man, I've still got to stick with it. You know, we don't get into politics on here. It doesn't matter. Like, I know our British viewers know British politics. I bet y'all know, like everyone else does, that it is a hilarious show to watch the House of Commons in action. It's hilarious. I mean, like, honestly, it actually keeps you a little bit more involved than American politics does. Because if you ever watch C-SPAN, you actually watch discussions in the House. They are boring. I mean, like, they are really, really boring. And in a way, that's a good thing, I suppose. It keeps it a lot more civil. But in Britain, it is like an absolute, like, it is like a roadside house with people just arguing. And I mean, like, it's actually kind of interesting to watch. But order. But anyways, with that is why we read it off, chap. And I hope that addresses that fairly well, because I know you can read, but some people can't. And so, Jeffro, how very dare you? Oh, triple dog dare you? You come down to Birmingham, yeah? You mess with me in Smethwick. You know that one, Matthew?
Maybe.
I'll
think
tell
so.
you what, you fat little. And then he says, come down to Birmingham, come down to Smethwick, ask for Timmy, yeah? And I'm going to come out there and I'm going to mess you up.
Oh man, don't ever get Timmy out there. Timmy come out with the 9.
Oh man, watch out though. Paul, otherwise known as Iceland, he might sit there. Oh yeah, boss, come down. Come down to Gloucestershire, boss. We're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Mark Perez. He says, "So no boat in Crimea got taken out?" Question mark. I don't think we know yet.
We don't know yet. We don't really know for certain. We do see smoke coming from a port facility, which means that the port may have been hit or the ships may have been hit. We just don't really know at this moment. We're going to be waiting for the daylight to come to probably get better pictures of what happened there. And hopefully we will get better pictures, but we can't ever really guarantee that either. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also Gregory Pennick. I would attempt that one, but I don't think I can ever do that one justice. I can't quite get my voice to be that dramatic and squeaky.
Wait, who's it supposed to be?
Oh
no, wait a minute! I saw it now. I couldn't do that one either. How dare you? But he's in that. We're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Cappy, I think, who says, "Do you think taking Crimea first would be a good strategy?"
Yes, I actually think that it'd be more beneficial for the Ukrainians to take Crimea than it would be for the Donbass, because the Russians would fight for the Donbass fairly significantly if Crimea still holds, because, the Russian strategic value of having anything in Ukraine at that point is still important, so they would fight for it. If the Ukrainians took Crimea, however, the Russians are really not going to be able to justify trying to hold the Donbass anymore, because while the Russians want to sit there and say they're protecting the ethnic Russians, and they did create the DPR and the LPR, those were really more as a sideshow to make it look like the annexation of Crimea was part of a natural revolt of the Russian-speaking people in that area, to give it a little bit more legitimacy. So if Crimea was taken, they'd probably give up the Donbass with less of a fight than they would otherwise. So I would say it's more beneficial for them to target Crimea first than it is for them to try and take the Donbass, although they could do it either way. It's just that I think it'll end up with a shorter war and less losses if they go for Crimea first. Of course, if the Russians don't go mental and then start flinging nukes, that's, a large factor in the equation. But with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And let's see here. Next question we have is from Mad Machine, who says, "Will Ukraine make the nuke power plant a high priority?"
The Zaporizhzhia power plant, they may, but I feel like that's going to be indirectly captured by Ukrainian forces, because once they start to shoot southwards, the Russians will leave this area most likely immediately. The Russians will probably not want to hold on to it for long. So I would say they're probably not going to beeline for it, but they certainly will send a small force out there to make sure that they secure the power plant, return it back to normal operations, and also start to move in anything needed to try and get the power plant back up to I guess you could say nominal parameters. So with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Anonymous, who says, "Are you aware of that lawyer challenging the legality of the breakup of the USSR?" And man, does he not have anything else better to do?
And I would say I have not heard of that attorney, and how in the world would they? I don't know how in the world people act like there's supposed to be some kind of legal basis. Because one thing about the USSR map, and let me show you all the map of the USSR, is that the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, otherwise known as the USSR, or in Russian, in Russian it was the SSSR, something like that. It was the CCCP. That's the way it's spelled in English, or the Latin alphabet. But the Soviet Union, this is probably the best map we can get of it, was already divided up into the countries we see today. For example, Kazakhstan existed the same way it exists now, as well as Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states. So when the Soviet Union collapsed, it was really not these countries just literally forming themselves out of the ashes of the Soviet Union. These borders already existed for decades inside of the Soviet Union. And it actually is interesting because the Ukrainians did get Crimea at some point, I believe in the 1960s. It was handed over from the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, the RSFSR, which is modern-day Russian Federation. It was handed over from them to the Ukrainians. But before that, it was Ukrainian during the late 1910s and the early 1920s. And then the Russians took it back, and then they kept it in the RSFSR, and then gave it back to Ukraine. And so when they broke away, they brought Crimea with them, and they brought it, and every other country just brought their borders with them. So it would make no sense to challenge the legality of that, because it was more like this union of nation states broke apart, and then they just continue to exist literally with the exact same borders they had during the Soviet Union. So I don't really know what kind of legality question there would be there, but it's not like anyone stole any land from each other. They literally just, the Soviet Union just broke apart. A lot of people actually confuse the Soviet Union with the Warsaw Pact as well, and include East Germany and Poland into the quote-unquote Soviet Union. They're actually separate and actually have a little bit of a different history than the Soviet Union. The Polish actually traded heavily and had some very good relations with the United States of America throughout most of its communist history, surprisingly enough. And the East Germans were considered the techno-computer capital of the entirety of the Warsaw Pact. And that wasn't at all really directly affected by the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, of course, controlled what kind of of weapons these countries had, and would also step in and crush any uprisings or revolts that were happening within these countries. But a lot of these countries would carry on their own path a little bit and be able to do their own things outside of the Soviet Union. But I would say that that's weird to question the legality of such a thing because, what is he going to do? Have some kind of court out there? What kind of court has the authority to go, you know what? The Soviet Union has to be pushed back together. We have to make the Soviet Union again. Like, how in the world do you actually enforce that?
That's what I was going to ask. What court is he suing in? And also, it's like, what kind of court's going to have the ability to reinstate the entire Soviet Union?
Yeah, I would
just not, even if there was a court with that kind of power, it's impossible to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like that's legitimately insane, really, to think about. That is a pointless thing to bring up, really, because it's like
someone with too much time on their hands,
way too much time, and apparently not making enough money. And so with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on. Oh, that's even a more interesting map of the USSR. Wait, hang on. This was weird because it actually like cuts out the Baltic states, Belarus, and parts of Ukraine. What year was this supposed to be? I can't really tell. Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. This had to have been at some point during like the 1920s or the 1930s because the Russians had not taken all of Lake Ladoga yet in the Winter War. So, yeah, that's interesting. That's a weird map. Anyways, we're getting caught up in map rabbit holes. With that, I hope we answered that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And I see Bilbo Jenkins said they're filing it in the Russian Supreme Court. That seems like they might have something bad happen to them for doing something like that, because isn't that like a direct threat to Putin's power anyway? Not that the case has a chance of going anywhere in Russia.
Oh, the only threat this has of anything?
Somebody falls out of a window?
No. This guy is going to end up strapped to the bottom of a submarine on its deployment for 6 months. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next question goes to Jerry S. He says, could a sound frequency set off landmines? You could cover an entire field with a speaker system or and blow up all mines within a specific distance. It would be a better way.
I don't know if they can. I'd feel like it'd be possible, but I don't know if that kind of level of sound or the vibrations of that sound would be devastating to people or animals in the area. Because certain kinds of vibrations of sound, once they get deep enough, actually can liquefy organs, if people don't know. So, that's why whenever a sonar is active in the water, they actually tell you to not be in the water near an active sonar, because sonar will liquefy your organs, not because of any radiation or anything like that. It's actually because of the vibrations of the sound it's making in the water. And it can kill you. It actually kills whales, as a matter of fact. It's that deadly. So I'd have a feeling that would be dangerous to humans in the area. Who knows how dangerous it would be in the vicinity around that object, whatever it may be. But it is possible, I would assume. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Foe, who says, do you have any idea how many troops / how much equipment Russia has stacked up to defend the Crimea line?
We really don't know. I'm assuming it's probably around 50 to 40,000 guys at the most. But then again, that's just going off of troop density ideas. We don't really have anything to really back that up. But I would take a ballpark guess at around 40 to 50,000 guys on that southern line, because there's not a lot going on down there. They're poorly supplied, so it can't be like 100,000 of them or so. That would just be far too much, in my opinion, and especially considering what's going on in Avdiivka and Bachmut, probably drawing up a large amount of Russians from other parts of the front lines to build up a reserve to rotate forces in and out with. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to David Myers. He says, why doesn't the U.S. send Ukraine some napalm munitions to clear out the orcs in the no-man areas, since it's not illegal?
I actually have a feeling, I think that incendiaries are illegal, because we've been deriding the Russians throughout the course of the war for using white phosphorus, and napalm is that, but literally the next level in terms of incendiary damage to people, and especially if you put white phosphorus in the napalm, because then even if you are able to extinguish the flames or stop yourself from melting pretty much in the fire, the white phosphorus continues to burn all the way down to your bone and then through your bone. So I feel like that will most likely be some kind of a war crime.
I thought it was only a war crime if you used it on civilians, because I thought if you used it in the battlefield on soldiers, it was good to go.
Let's see. The following weapons and means of combat are considered to be prohibited: napalm bombs and other incendiary weapons. So those are prohibited even against use against on combatants, according to the International Committee of the Red Cross.
Is that like Geneva Convention or something?
Let's see what it is. Let's see what it is. Rule 85. And what charter is this a part of?
I think it's some kind of UN thing.
Well, that would be the rules of war then. United Nations Forces of International Humanitarian Law. And if it's a United Nations thing, every member of the United Nations is supposed to follow these rules, and so that means that napalm would be prohibited.
Let's see, is napalm outlawed by Geneva Convention? Let's see. The United Nations did not ban the use of napalm in 1980 as part of the Geneva Convention, but only against civilian targets or against military targets in civilian areas.
So largely ruling it out for most of the war. Like in Bachmut, you couldn't drop napalm in there.
Maybe. I'm under the impression that you can use it on combatants, but not the civilians. Because I recall we looked at that a while back, and I thought that was the case.
It was the case for, I think, phosphorus, but I don't know about napalm, because I feel like napalm would fall under a different category of incendiary. But, maybe they can. If they could, I would say maybe. But really, the idea of burning people alive is kind of World War II-ish. Like, it's kind of World War II-ish. We don't really see that happening much anymore, but, if it is possible, and it's in the middle of a forested area, why not? So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. In case you all don't know, though, napalm is about as gruesome as it gets in killing people. You burn them alive, and if they even are somehow able to extinguish the fire, the white phosphorus continues to burn them alive. So it is probably one of the most painful and worst ways to die on a battlefield. So it's kind of a real big question of, do you really want to torture people like that and killing them? That's why warfare has largely been relegated down to really just shooting people or killing them with shrapnel, because those are really the two most, I guess, really, and that's even kind of weird to say, the most humane ways to kill people in a war, although getting hit near to a artillery shell can really mangle you, and then you're still alive, but extremely mangled. But, there's a little bit of nuances to everything. But with that, I hope we addressed it the best we can. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to JustABill02, who says, are there any bridges still up in the Dnipro? And how wide is that river? And any chance a Bailey Bridge could cross it?
The Dnipro River is quite wide, and I believe we measured it down here at a point, and it was around a mile wide. On average throughout most of the area in between Kherson and Novikhovka. Of course, that extends into multiple miles wide within the reservoirs that you find throughout most of the Dnipro River, and I believe this is the most dammed river in the entirety of Europe, as a matter of fact. So you're looking at the most dammed river. So the wideness of it varies greatly from place to place, but down in the Kherson area, it's about a mile wide on average. You can build a Bailey Bridge, as this is going to take a decent amount of effort, and you're also going to have to ferry a large amount of pontoons into that area to create that. The current is not that strong from what we can tell, so it's certainly possible, certainly feasible. It's just that it'll take a lot of them, and it'll also have to be over a large area. And really, there's only one place it could be doable, which is right near the Antonovsky Bridge, which creates kind of an inevitable target. The Ukrainians, if they wanted to move around in this area, would probably have to end up doing the exact same thing the Russians did, which is to create a ferry and then ferry the infantry and the supplies across, which greatly reduces the supply load of forces that could be managed on the other side. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Richie MC said, that is a damn river, and it is. And so that we are on to the final question of the night. So, who was lucky last person who asked the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Memekov, who says, regarding location for the start of the counteroffensive, do you guys think fake out or no fake out or double fake out?
I think the Ukrainians are not faking it. I think the counteroffensive is coming up. But once again, everyone has to remember, the Ukrainians are going to throw a smoke and mirror show before the counteroffensive begins, psyching out the Russians to thinking it's going to be today, it's going to be tomorrow, it's going to be here, it's going to be there. And then once they subvert all of their expectations, then it'll begin. So I think it will happen. There is a fake out going on right now, most likely. But they're certainly going to be conducting one here soon. Of course, I'm not going to weigh in on the events we're seeing right now and whether I think those are a fake out or not, but it is something I believe they'll certainly be doing here in the future, or even right now. So with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank every single one of y'all so much for coming tonight. We raised $7,161 for Save the Children, and I think that's amazing to know that we've been able to help out so many children inside of Ukraine, once again, through that amazing fundraiser, and of course, through all of the combined efforts of the Leaf Spring Army. Y'all are absolutely amazing when it comes to fundraising and helping us to keep this channel running without having to bend a knee to YouTube AdSense, to sponsors, or to anyone for that matter. And I've got to thank y'all all so much once again for helping to keep the Enforcer channel so unique and so special, thanks to the great community that we have here. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all did enjoy the entirety of the stream tonight, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we will be running these streams, of course, 6 days a week from Tuesday to Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single day, covering the past 24 hours of the war. And on Tuesday, we'll, of course, be covering the past 48 hours. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, and of course, Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you all on Tuesday.
And good night, Slav Ukraine, and congratulations on another successful fundraiser. Herom Slava.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу.